everybody. Welcome to the Ghost Squawk Experience, episode 12. Today we have a special guest, very, very special guest, Ramsley Brice, with us today. He's a business consultant,
Let's say
bu-
business analyst consultant.
business business technology analyst at Deloitte.
Yes.
Nice, nice, nice. So you're based out of Montreal. You worked with a lot of large-scale digital transformation projects across financial, utilities, transportation industries, and other public sectors. Previously employed in the financial industry, you've built a solid understanding of financial market trends. I can see where that comes from, yeah. Uh, Exposed to a lot of high-level business strategies by working with numerous decision-making clients, and also you're the co-host of Les General.
It's
Although
the generalist. So in French, it's les généralistes. But
Les
yeah,
Généralistes. Okay, sorry about
yeah,
that.
it's all good,
A French-speaking podcast. So you basically carved a niche in the French-speaking podcast.
bro. That's the perfect explanation for why we wanted to do this, right? We wanted to like really target that market, and
Oh man, well,
there you go.
fuck, man. Let's start off with that topic then. Anyways, before we get started on that, I just wanted to show you the drinks that we brought for you. So I don't know if you remembered a while back we had like a very special drink that we imported from Florida.
Yes.
And
Yeah, yeah. Who
we
brought
really
that
we really
over?
wanted you to try it, right? So this time around, I made sure we imported the Sweet Baby Jesus for you.
Nice. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
So
So
mine,
what'd you bring?
yeah. So when I first started coming to, Montreal to, teach with you guys is, both of you actually, as you remember, one of the first beers I tried here was with you, Rams, and that was ta-da, Le Fin du Monde. It's like a very Quebecois beer,
Yeah.
and so I just had to bring it back in honor of good times. So cheers, buddy.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Hey, listen.
Drinking out of a pickle jar, but it's still Le Fin du Monde.
That's I love it. Hey, listen. I don't have a beer. I have gin, so I'm gonna chill with you guys.
There we go. Cheers, buddy.
There we
you
go.
know, and I just want to say, actually, from I've known you guys for some time, and to this day, I think you guys are the most beer aficionados that I've known. Like, I've
I will
never
We'll
take
take
it.
that. I'll take that. I'll take
I'll
that.
take that. Yeah.
to this day I've never met people that know their beers like you guys do. It's like crazy. So I'm
Dude,
just gonna give
you,
that
you
to
should see this, man. On the label on the side here, it says a classic full-bodied robust porter with a smooth dry finish and just enough hops to balance the aroma and flavors of roasted malt, chocolate, and peanut butter. So rich that with just one sip, you will exclaim the name, "Sweet Baby Jesus!"
Hey, sweet baby Jesus.
Yo, man.
And how it's written is exactly how we discuss our beers. It's like, this is a little malty and it has a little bit too much hops flavor, but I detect a sweet hint of nutmeg.
100%.
Oh, man. Yeah, I remember good times when we were drinking this with you.
Yes, definitely.
God damn, man. So what have you been up to?
Man, keep working. Actually, for since the pandemic hit, it's been business as usual, but even more so of like trying to move everything, from home and just really get that going. So things have been going well on that thing. Working on some other projects as well, such as Les Généralistes. So keeping ourselves busy and just trying to follow up, what's been going on. Like, I mean, 2020 has been 1 year for the history books. So like trying to keep up with everything, man.
Oh, that's crazy, man. That's crazy. Well, let's start off by talking about the podcast
Actually,
first.
real quick, let's introduce Chase too.
Oh,
Chase
right.
has been working
Yes.
with us
Oh,
here
yeah.
at Ghost Squawk. He's been a little quiet lately, but let's give him a chance to pop on and introduce himself.
Yeah, Chase, what are you
Uh,
drinking, man?
I'm actually not drinking today. I drank too much last night.
Well, there you go.
It's good.
So did we, Chen.
Yeah, we gotta
Yeah,
live up to
that's-
the
Ramsey.
reputation.
I was drinking yesterday with Chen's stepdad at a barbecue. So
Yeah, that never stopped you guys, so it's all good, man. Oh man, that's cool. That's cool.
Somebody
All
said
right.
futures are tanking right now.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I guess
you
the
guys, if you
market's
guys
just
see,
open.
I have my screen up. I mean, like we have the markets up right now, so
Yeah.
the S&P 500 is coming
Oh,
down
yeah.
a little bit at the opening. It does seem like there's a little bit of risk off sentiment going on in the markets from the second wave. maybe some potential rise and whatnot. I mean, are you you still actively monitoring trading? I know people probably monitor markets. Are you still trading markets, Rebs?
I would say I'm investing long term, so I'm more into long term investing right now. When the whole pandemic happened, I started dabbling with options a bit,
Okay,
just
yeah,
because of trying to catch some volatility in the markets as well, and still active in the crypto space. So I still keep my positions here and there. So yeah, still definitely in touch with what's been going on, and if you want to talk about what's happening, definitely down to talk about that for sure.
Oh yeah.
Are you actively trading cryptos, or are you more hodling?
I'm more of a hodler. I would say more of a hodler, trying to find some levels and try to get off. Trying to feel the sentiment when I feel like, some levels are really getting.
We happen to have a tool for that.
Yeah. And, and you guys, what you've been doing is pretty awesome. So I'm definitely like looking at what you guys are doing and being like, oh, okay.
Oh yeah. Our crypto sentiment is gonna be available in like about 3 to 4 weeks. So we should have that tool available. I mean, like in addition to the other, like the one that you see here on the screen right now, like you see, we basically tweaked it so that it's reading headlines and it's telling you which asset class it's specifically targeting, right? So you can see
not only that, but what's important, and you get like the histogram in the middle. We call the riskogram. See what we did there? And
I love it.
It's giving you a breakdown, obviously, of the articles as far as the risk sentiment is concerned. And, so this is for like general markets, the general financial markets, oil, commodities, gold, all that shit kind of bonds, all that shit kind of lumped into one. But basically, we're going to start specializing from here on out, including it all in the base package. So Chase is going to help us with penny stocks. He helped us get, the sources for cryptos, good sources for cryptos off Twitter, RSS, websites, all that. And basically, my job is to come in and do data shit to get that all to present to you guys. So that's all going to be available pretty soon. We're gradually expanding the capabilities of Ghost Squawk.
You can see the headline here, like like when it's reading, like when the machine learning algorithm is picking up headlines like from Powell, like it's telling you it's gonna affect like bonds, U.S. dollar stocks, right? So like
and it's doing that all automatically. By the way, this is a natural language processing thing that reads the news, understands the context, and understands which assets these hits.
Yo, you guys are coming along pretty quickly and pretty fast. So,
bro,
man,
you know the fucking crazy thing, Raz, man. The coronavirus blew us up.
Yeah,
like it wasn't. I mean, like as tragic as it is, it was an opportunity, right? And it was an opportunity that we capitalized on hard. And bro, like our Discord, we went from like 300, 400 members in March to like we're like 1,300 now.
We're pushing 1,300, but also we have a really good team too. So shouts to Handy and Johan and of course Chase for helping us out with that, because like me, us, man. When it comes to, we're good at drinking beer and trading, and anything that goes outside of those areas, we're kind of like the whole marketing, social media stuff. We're kind of like dirt.
Don't forget Phil and Sin as well. These guys they also
for sure.
But yeah, I mean, like in like a very short period of time, we developed. Well, the algorithm was already developed in the back end. We already had it before the coronavirus, but we refined it during that time and made it a viable service. And then now we're just taking that and applying it to cryptos, and the cryptos is going to be done pretty soon. So, I mean, like once we get that done, we're just going to start going to like product specific. Like, so if you want to trade options, like we'll apply the natural language processing system towards options or penny stocks or pretty much anything, right? And then we'll just give you risk sentiment indicators to help you position yourself in the markets.
That's pretty dope, and by the way, nice to meet you, Chase. And I mean, hats off.
Nice to meet you too, Rams.
All right, thanks, man. And like I'm definitely looking forward for that. So
yeah, for sure, man. We'll send you a subscription, man, on the house.
Oh damn! All
right. Yeah, you're VIP. So make sure you pop onto our Discord and chime in every once in a while. Be awesome to have your thoughts.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Well, now let's take a step back and talk about how you got into podcasting, because we kind of just fell into this. I mean, like I said, we started with the coronavirus thing, right? And Danny had a friend, Zach, who was a pandemic specialist.
Well, I mean, he's actually his
what's his official title?
Well, his skill set is pretty broad, right? He has a background in neuroscience and art. but a lot of his medical background has been in epidemiology and virology and genetics and things like that. So he's very, very qualified to study. He's actually doing a bunch of research projects actively on the coronavirus right now as we speak. Right. So this is a person who's extraordinarily qualified to be speaking on this from a very scientific basis, not political or anything, just coming in with facts and data. Right. Yeah. And it's interesting because he predicted we'd be like out of this mess, like at least kind of on the upswing around, if I recall correctly, and Zach, feel free to blast me in the comments if I'm wrong, but around June, July. And it seems like he's right on target. He also unfortunately predicted a second wave that unfortunately we're actually seeing exactly happening
right now,
at this time. Yeah, and if you guys don't believe me, feel free to call bullshit, but we have it recorded on a GSC Experience like 2 or something like that, where he was going over this. So it's actually on record where he called this out. So
and I remember that was your first guess, if I remember right.
Yeah. The GSC number 1 was just kind of us bullshitting and drinking. And
it's always a good excuse anyways, so it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. So if we don't have a guest, we're just like, all right, I guess we just got to drink ourselves again.
It literally started with us just like, you know what? We're all sitting at home. We got nothing better to do. Our buddy is a pandemic specialist, biologist, or no, I'm butchering the word.
So cheers to Zach if you're listening.
But we just brought him in. We're like, the market's going crazy, and you specialize in this. Let's just talk about this and drink and stream, and then like one thing led to another, and here we go. We're on our 12th episode now. So yeah,
that's great, man.
So we didn't really start with any plan at all. Like our thing was we were just
totally DC it, right? We just kind of do shit, right?
But
I call it douche. I call it douche. Do shit till it works.
I mean, that's the beauty of it. You can just go ahead and start doing it, and then and you just structure around it as you go along. So that's like
cool. We're the best at just figuring that shit out as we go along, right?
Yeah, just winging it, pure winging it.
Yeah. Exactly.
No planning whatsoever.
Yeah, so that's,
usually with a beer in hand.
Yeah, I mean, so that's pretty much how we got started. I mean, like we were just talking to a buddy, drinking, and then one thing led to another, and we're just like, all right, let's just roll with it. So how did you get started with Les Généralistes?
Man,
the
Généralistes. So basically, man, to be honest, it's I've been a podcast listener for like the longest time. I think my first podcast that I really listened to was called Hardcore History, and that was like back in 2015. So I've been like listening to a bunch of podcasts since the last like 5 years, and then I was like, you know what? I think I can do that, man. It's not that hard. It's not that complicated, and I think for me and my co-host Alexander, right? They couldn't be here. It's his birthday, so he had to take the day off today.
Oh well, shout out to him and happy birthday to Alexander.
Yeah, exactly. And then so we just we've been having conversation about everything, right? And that's what we call ourselves, les généralistes, the generalists, because we can have conversations about like things about culture, things about technology, about what's the real deal about like 5G, right? We can talk about business, the market. What is UBI? Is that something that makes sense or not, right?
Yeah.
So eventually, we're like, you know what? Let's just make something, because we just felt that, let's say, just first in Montreal, in the French-speaking market, if you look at our demographic, which is young Montrealer, from different origins and whatnot, like there weren't any media that had those subjects discussed, right? So if you were to like listen to those subjects, you had to go to something like NPR or some like PBS documentary that would talk about those subjects, right? So we're like, okay,
it'd be in English, right?
Exactly, and it'd be in English, right? So we thought to
nice.
ourselves, let's bring those subjects, to the masses in a way that like, it's relatable, and we can just talk about it like, we're just chilling, even us too, when we do live, sometimes, we always have a drink, I got my bottle right here, always ready. So
yeah, I saw some of your content. You guys do a lot of like comedic spins and stuff, eh?
Exactly, because at the end of the day, that's what gets the people. Like, we do sketches.
Yeah.
But
it's who we are too. You know what I mean? We're jovial. We're fun.
Exactly. So that's really how we fell into making the podcast. And to be honest, like even like yourself, with the pandemic, it was kind of like a blessing in disguise in terms of our podcast, because we were able to reach a lot more listeners, right? With everybody on their cell phones all the time. And even with what's been going on with the protests, it's helped us kind of find a new voice about people that kind of wanted more information about like our thoughts about what's been going on. So it really kind of grew into something on its own, and it's like really awesome. So yeah, man.
So that's amazing. So how long have you guys been around? How long have you guys been doing your podcast?
Since November, and the reason why I like to say since November is because since the pandemic, we've seen so many new podcasts coming on, and we'll be like, "Yo, we've been there since like way before that damn trend." So
Nice.
you know,
Your
you know what I mean?
grandfather, your grandfather, you beat us. You
Exactly.
beat us to it.
Nah, don't worry, but you guys been doing great. I mean, I'm following up onto like John McAfee, so like I'm just saying. So I have big shoes to fill. So you guys are like doing a great job.
Yeah, we were really fortunate to get him on the podcast.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah, he had some interesting projects with regards to the Ghost phone and the Ghost token, and we just had to get him on because we're Ghost Squawk, right?
Exactly.
Right? So like he just
And not only that,
we just started
not
talking
only that-
ghosts.
not only that, it was an excuse for us to blow up our first beer sponsor.
Oh yeah, and that too.
I
We
saw
got our
that.
first.
I saw that. You get a free case of beer or something. I was like, okay, that's cool.
Yeah, we got a couple bottles.
Yeah, like that was the other funny thing was that like we never wanted to like we never wanted to like capitalize like from this like make money or anything like that. Our whole thing was like how can we get somebody to give us free beer and talk to people.
And you succeeded, man. It's all good.
Yo, what I like to say is 10, 11 episodes in, we got our first sponsor. So shout outs to Late Start Brewing for making that happen.
If we ever get out of work, Chin's going to be on the side of the road with a sign that said "We'll work for beer."
I mean, if it worked one time, it can work again, so it's fine.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, man. Like we got a spot here in Montreal that we plan to go to like when shit opens up to the watering hole, man. You're gonna come with us, man. We're gonna.
Oh my.
No, we're
sure.
we're both gonna get
Oh.
sponsors. We're both gonna. You know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about.
I mean,
Yeah.
you know those nights that dudes you sell all this fucking
Oh
thing.
yeah.
I mean, it's just another meeting up waiting to happen, so it's all good, man.
Yeah, it's
Let's
all good.
bring the band back together.
lot of good fun. So, with your podcast, do you focus on just the Quebec region, or do you guys reach other French speakers in other parts of the world?
It's a good question because for sure our focus when starting was like, let's just focus on people from the Quebec region, just because we wanted to make something that's relatable, right?
Right.
But by going through the episodes and looking at our data, what we came to realize is that sometimes you'll have people from outside of Quebec, because there are French-speaking people in the rest of Canada that listen to our stuff. But sometimes you have people from France, people from Africa that listens to us. Because,
Yeah. Africa, Caribbean, man. There's a lot. There's a lot of French-speaking nations around the world, man. Like you're not confined to just Quebec.
Exactly, and some of the subjects we talk about are universal, right? So,
Absolutely.
We talk about retirement. We talk about what is ESG investing? Is that something that makes sense? That affects everybody. It's not just something that's really Quebec specific. So we tend to stay around topics, but we use broader concept. We want to bring those concepts that can reach a lot of people. Everywhere in the world. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean that's so interesting that that we converged like on this similar idea, because when we wanted to do the Ghost Squawk Experience, right? Like we just wanted to talk to people about like money, finance, economics, entrepreneurship, business trends, and all things related to that field. But we wanted to do it in a way that was different from what other people were doing, right? And so me and Danny, we're very different, right? I mean, like we wanted to bring the drinking element into it because it was kind of like the Jerry Seinfeld comedians.
Well, to be fair, we didn't want to do
Yeah.
anything. We just started it, and while we were speaking, we were drinking anyway. So it just kind of was like,
So
It's there.
yeah, so the whole comedian in cars getting coffee. Well, man, me and Dan were like, let's just find a drink for the person we're speaking to. So that's how the whole thing came about, right? And the Ghost Squawk Experience just came from we're big podcast listeners too, and Joe Rogan just happened to be one of my favorites, and so we just piggybacked off the Joe Rogan Experience, and we called it the Ghost Squawk Experience, right?
So now you're just waiting for your $100 million.
You got that right. That's exactly what I was getting ready to say. Give us that $100 million deal.
Exactly. You gotta 2-3 months. Just
you
keep it-
listening, Spotify?
Yeah.
Come and get us, Amazon.
We got a bunch of degenerate drinkers over here that need millions of dollars to drink more.
So hey, can I ask you guys a question actually about that? So
Yeah, go for it, man.
So what is, because you said that when you just started and it just happened, like what have you maybe learned about your listenership or like your audience while doing the podcast? Like, is there something that you didn't know about like your own brand that just happened once you started? Well, since you started.
I think we just really kind of fell into it. Really, I think that we started hitting, because we obviously have the market spin, but we tried to get like a diversity of guests, right, that have other experiences too. Like for example, Loriana, she's an artist in addition to like a crypto person, and I find that our audience really appreciates that. Number two, I think one of the reasons why Joe Rogan is so extraordinarily successful is that he's real, right?
Yeah.
He's not pushing an agenda, and he admits when he doesn't know shit. I mean, I admit like I'm dumb as fuck when it comes to certain things, and I will happily throw my hands up and leave it to our guests to do that. So that's kind of like how we roll, It's just being real with the audience and having interesting people and having thought-provoking discussions. We never try to let the conversation go stale, and we realized that our market really tends to gravitate on that. What do you think, Chad?
Honestly, I didn't really think of the audience that we were tailoring this to. For me, it was just more of like a heartfelt conversation between myself and the guests that I'm bringing on, and just having like a meaningful conversation with things that are related to what I've mentioned earlier, right? And the audience was really more of like an afterthought. From my perspective, I never thought of it from the perspective of I'm doing this for the viewers' enjoyment. For me,
No. I don't think that we're catering or anything. It's just I think that we're gravitating toward the people who resonate with us.
Yeah, you tend to learn. You tend to learn from just seeing who's listening to you as well, right? Like, okay, it just happened to be like that kind of audience that we're reaching, So
right. Yeah, absolutely. And I still feel like like we're still fairly new, in the sense that I don't think we've collected enough information to really.
Well, but because the demographic is just so varied. I mean, we have people coming onto our Discord like 15 years old wanting to learn investing. On the other end of the spectrum, we had a 67-year-old dude come on, saying, "I love what you do. I resonate with you." As far as race, it's like every single thing you can think of. There's no specific like Ghost Squawk person, right? It's everybody. And the coolness of the Discord is absolutely a lot of international. What's cool about Discord is that you can completely obfuscate your identity. You don't have to know who these people are, or I'm just speaking in terms of like who's volunteered that information to me. But since it's largely anonymous, like we just don't care.
Yeah.
No, it's cool, and it kind of like resonate what you said earlier about like, even Joe Rogan, right? What's nice about Joe Rogan is that he just gets such a big variety of people that like, whenever you listen to one episode to the next, could just be so different. And like you said, like if you had, like I said, the artist that was also a crypto person, like we all have different facets of our lives. So, if you only like invite people from like, big banks or investment banks or, private equity, it doesn't really like reach people. Then, people like us, that just have like side jobs, different projects, different things.
I'll give an example. Like there's a guy, Sam Harris. He's, I've come on publicly, disparaging this guy multiple times because like basically he made a statement saying that he didn't want to have anybody who supported Donald Trump on his podcast because he didn't feel that there was anyone intellectually his equal who supported the guy. And so he basically just shut down that part of the argument. Look, man, I want to have people who disagree with me. I want to have the crackpots. I want to have the conspiracy theorists. I want to have far left Antifa people, and I want to have far right, whoever, right, just to come on and share ideas because I believe free speech is the way to shut down bad ideas, right? Like if somebody comes on as like a racist or a bigot, the best way to do it is just to let them speak and see how ignorant they are. Right. To share this with the world instead of shutting people down and silencing voices. We need to let them speak to filter out to the surface. What are the good ideas and what are the bad ideas?
Okay.
Yeah. And just to go back to your point, I mean, like, when we started talking about this and started talking about, like, will we eventually run out of guests or run out of topics to talk about, and I was going through this and doing some brainstorming. I was like, you can make connections between business and trends in so many different ways that we'll never run out of guests, interesting guests to talk to, or or people to bring on, right? And topics to discuss. It's like I wanted to, bring on like a psychologist and talk about psychology and how that affects performance in trading or in financial markets. Or I wanted to invite like a gamer on, like somebody who's playing like a very popular video game, and talk to them about why they're interested in microtransactions within video games, right? And how similar that is to the real economy. Right.
Well, and there's almost always a way to tie anybody's interest back into the markets.
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
It's like because markets are driven.
Yeah, that's why
markets are driven by people.
It goes back to your point of what you're talking about, how your podcast is, you're discussing these topics, but you're doing it in French, and you never run out of like topics to discuss, right? I mean, for us, for me, it's like the same perspective, like I can talk about this all day long to anybody, right? So I'm not worried about, running out of topics. I'm just more worried about, like, can we find people who will give us, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour to sit down and have like these engaging conversations. And we're very open-minded, right? So, I want anybody and everybody to come on, regardless of political views or whatnot, just to get their perspective on things, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I mean,
one thing I did want to ask you for your perspective, Rams, is like, since I've been, I actually came back to Montreal. I'm in Montreal at the moment. I moved to Tampa.
Nice. Yeah.
And so I can see the difference between, how the U.S. is responding and how Canada is responding. I see like, for example, like in downtown, right? You go downtown, you have to like wait outside. They're forcing you to like wait outside like dogs, with this COVID-19 stuff. And I'm just wondering, do you think that this is an appropriate response, or do you think it's like really overblown?
Well, it's hard to say if it's inappropriate and overblown right now. I think that's something that we'll be able to like, and I'm not like I'm not a specialist, like I'm not like a virologist or anything, but I feel like it's something that we'll only be able to know later on, right? And the thing is, and maybe if you're asking about the difference between, let's say, Montreal or what's been going on, in the States, I feel like in Quebec and Montreal, there's been a bigger response to let's shelter at home, let's stay home, let's do the lockdown, right? And now that we're starting to see the confinement, that's where you see people starting to say, okay, let's let loose, right? Whereas I feel like in the US, it became more of a statement of like, my freedom to do something, right? So
Yes.
Is it overblown or not? I don't think necessarily what happened in Montreal is overblown because, of all the provinces in Canada, Quebec has had the biggest numbers, right? And one of the factors why they had the biggest numbers is that our spring break happened before any other province. So we have, I think, 40 to 60% of the numbers of cases and, about 60% of the deaths happened here. So is it overblown? I don't think so, because now the cases are still going down and, people are now deconfining and the effect to the economy was not that bad. Whereas, you can see some places, in the States, there was protests about reopening the economy. Now we're seeing the second wave and we don't know how bad it will be. But, it has been said that, once the second wave comes into play, there's no shutting down the economy again, right? They tried it once. There's no trying again. So maybe they should have done it better. We'll only be able to see in about 4 to 6 months from now when really the second wave hits us, in big time.
Well, I mean, I thought the whole idea of the shutting down the economy was so that anybody who was contracted was able to get medical help, or at least not suck up the resources of the hospital systems.
Yeah.
Right. So that now that the flatten the curve idea is done and over with, the second wave is expected, but it's expected in the sense that they're going to be able to manage the amount of people that get sick now.
Exactly. But it also depends.
The expectations are set.
Yeah, exactly. But it also depends, like, the variety of like the second wave, right? And that's the thing is that the first wave will define how the second wave how bad it will be, right? The impact of it. So, like you said, now the idea is for the health system is to stockpile all the medical, all the PPE, all the stuff that they need for the second wave, right? So they don't, if they get caught off guard, man, at the end of the day, they should have been able to do this. And by the way, hey Phil, just want to say hi.
What's up, everyone? How are you doing?
Hey, what's
Good.
up, man?
You
Good.
you enjoying the SBJ, Phil?
Hey,
I am opening right now.
Nice.
I
Good, man.
gave Phil that
Cheers,
bottle
buddy.
of I gave Phil that bottle of SBJ 2 weeks ago.
Cheers. How you doing,
Damn.
Rams?
He's been
I'm
saving
good,
it
and
for you, Rams.
Yeah, man. How you doing, man? I'm good, and you?
Super good, super good.
Nice.
Man, been trading every day.
Man, look at you, man. Look at you.
Yeah, Phil's one of our stars.
Oh, I have
He's
no
one of our
doubt
rock
about
stars.
that. I have no doubt about that.
Yo, this beer is amazing.
Yo, it's good, right? It's,
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
great.
and who
Phil,
introduced that shit to
read-
Quebec?
read-
Oh!
Read the label here on the side.
Hey,
Read that
Yeah.
label there on the side.
Sweet baby Jesus.
And tell me, is that not how we speak about beer, Phil?
Yeah.
it is.
Oh man.
So
So
what were you guys talking about? Sorry to crash like this in the middle of
No.
this session.
no, it's all good.
Actually, this is a topic you're gonna love. We were just talking about COVID and the responses and what's going on right here in Quebec and how they're dealing with it. And we just asked Rams what his opinion was in terms of is this excessive? Is
Okay.
this overblown? So I know you probably want to chime in with your thoughts on that because it's like, look, it's beautiful, it's summertime, and yet I walk down the streets of like
Yes.
Chinatown, for example, and it's dead, and I
Yeah,
just feel so sad, you know.
Obviously excessive in the
Yeah, the like for the 3 months that we have to enjoy life here in Quebec, you know, where it's actually like
that's so true.
where the 3 months where humans can survive outside without excessive protections, right?
Yeah.
It's we're all like
That's so true.
subjugated like rats to stay inside, and I just think it's really sad, you know, because like the summer months of right here in Quebec were some of the best
Yeah.
moments of my life, and it was made with you guys, like you,
Yeah.
Chen, with Rams, with
you know
Phil.
what?
That's hilarious.
I actually feel like to a certain extent the one of the reasons why Quebec was hit really hard is because Quebec and Montreal in general is really like a city with two faces. You know, there's really two sides to the city. You know, like in the winter, it's a completely different city, and as soon as the weather gets warmer, everybody's out, and the city
It's like
transforms.
you
right?
see the city bloom.
Yeah,
You see the
yeah,
city
exactly.
Yeah,
You
no,
see
no,
the city
definitely.
bloom, right? And when you're being told to stay
It's a good way to put it.
inside, but you're looking
That's terrible.
outside and it's fucking nice, you're just
Yeah,
gonna
no,
be
it's
like,
awful.
"Fuck this shit, I'm going out." You know what,
No,
you know what I
for
mean?
sure, for sure. No, exactly. But
Well, and I think a lot of the civil unrest was precipitated by this, right? You coop up a bunch of people indoors for like 3 months, and then all of a sudden they're going to cling on to whatever issue they can as an excuse to let loose.
well, it's more I feel about the fact that everybody has more time on their hands, right? If you have like
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
a few hours to give, then yes, you're gonna protest. Maybe a lot of people that maybe they felt the reason to protest and they understood the issues.
Yeah.
But if they were at work, they would have been like, oh,
Yeah.
I can do it. But now they're at home.
They
they're
had to
able
go to work
do that.
at 9 in the morning. They'd be like,
No,
"Ah, I'm
exactly.
not gonna stay up that late."
Yeah.
Exactly. No, but
Yeah.
but for sure,
That's true.
I do believe that it's a shame that we're losing such a nice spring because I mean, to be honest, we have some shitty springs sometimes, and that's one of the best ones we had in the last few years. You know what I mean? So,
Definitely.
but
Yeah.
if you look at Toronto, like Montreal versus Toronto, the numbers are not even comparable, right? So the fact is, I don't know if you've been to any parks right now. The parks are full. People are like going out. People are doing
Yeah.
Yo, dude, I
Yeah,
bike by,
people are like, fuck this, I'm going out.
I bike,
Exactly,
I
right?
bike by the parks and I'm like, yo, this is not social distancing.
Bro, it's like
No.
a festival. It's like literally like Coachella at every park. Literally,
Yeah.
like it's crazy. But
Yeah, man. At the Tam
I love
Tams, it's
it.
like, yo, what the
It's
fuck?
amazing.
yeah, like you see so many people, you're like, oh, what's going on? But the
Well,
fact-
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
thing I love about Quebecers is that they've always kind of been like, fuck you to the system. They just do what Quebecers do and they don't really care, right?
no,
Well, you have to. You have to. Or
But
else
the-
you lose your power as a citizen.
exactly. But the
Goddamn
fact
right.
is, for the 3 months that we were in lockdown, maybe that saved a lot of lives. So you know what? My perspective is, I'm gonna take a bullet for the next 3 months. Now it's summertime. We can go out. We can do our things.
Yeah.
Just stay safe. But those people that were like, you know what? Fuck this in March and fuck this in April. They might just get fucked later on. So I don't know. That's my perspective.
That's crazy. So what's
Double-sided knife there.
what's your take on the markets in this, man? Do you think we're gonna get a second wave downturn in the markets?
So you know what? My stance shift on that. At first, I was like, oh, the economy, like the market doesn't reflect what's going on in the economy. Maybe the economy is already thinking about the fact that we're not going to have a second wave, that we're just going to have a V-shaped recovery formation. And you know what? The Fed is just saying, you know what? I don't give a fuck what's happening, and we're just going to save the economy no matter what. So I was like, you know what? At first I was like, there's going to be a second downturn. Then I was like, you know what? The Fed doesn't give a fuck.
The Fed's all in.
Yeah, the Fed's like, you know what? I got the bazooka, man. I got the helicopter.
It's the first time they've ever used the word unlimited.
Exactly, right? So it's a blank check. They're like, you know what? We're ready. Whatever you want.
Yeah.
Let me know. So
Well,
I was like,
it's not only the Fed, man, but the Trump administration, man. They've already got like another $1 trillion lined up in stimulus.
exactly.
Like they're waiting for like 3K in the S&P 500 to hit, and then they're fucking coming right back in to buy up everything.
boom, 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 boom.
Well, I guess that's the point, right? If the Fed has majority in the stock market, then comes theirs, and they can manipulate it as they want.
So
So
you don't think we're gonna have like a second crash or a retest of like the lows that we saw back in like I believe it was like April?
I don't know about the lows. This is what I believe now. What I believe is it will all be dependent on how bad the second wave will be, right? Because if we get to a situation, I feel like the only scenario in my head where we see a retest of either the lows or something close to the lows is the scenario where you have a second wave that's actually really bad. We can't really reclose the economy, and we're stuck in the middle, and there's an election coming up. Like, it's just fucking chaos at this point. Like, nobody knows what's gonna happen.
No, wow, that'd be amazing.
You know what I mean? And you're just there, and it's like just.
I would prepare my popcorn and just watch the show.
Yeah, I feel like if you get like social unrest picking up as well because of that, a second wave, people are stuck in the limbo between like working and reopening business and things like that, and there's an election coming up, and like if it gets really bad, we could probably do like a second retest of that, but if it's controlled properly, I honestly don't think we'll probably see the retest of that of the levels we saw like a couple months ago.
S&P gapped like what 30 points at the open.
Yeah, well, I mean, like right now, there's a lot of second wave headlines coming in, right? But with all the stimulus, I mean, like you're really it's like the market versus the Fed.
Exactly.
Right. That's what I feel like is happening in the markets right now, and it's like as much as a contrarian or a bear as you want to be, if they have a blank check, as much as you want to short, you're shorting into their blank check.
Well, you guys remember my analogy about the 800-pound gorilla, right?
Oh yeah.
I haven't heard it.
Okay. So where does the 800-pound gorilla go?
I don't know.
Wherever the fuck he wants. Where does the 600-pound gorilla go? Wherever the fuck he wants, except where the 800-pound gorilla goes.
Right? Yeah, that's us.
So,
I like that.
Cheers.
I like
so the
that.
Fed is the 800-pound gorilla, and you do not want to get in his way.
Mm-hmm.
So let me ask you a question, because that's one thing that came into my mind. Okay, so what I'm thinking is, how there's been, and maybe that gets like a little bit philosophical or whatever, or just like big teams or whatnot, but I feel like if we get to a point where the market is all shit, there's a second wave, and that's, like I said, it's the only scenario where I feel like the market could get close to the lows, right? Other than that scenario, like probably the market will sustain its levels right now and go back to where it was before, right? But let's say you get to a point where like the Fed is just like, you know what, we're pumping because the economy is still shit like 6 months later. Like, at what point, like, doesn't that just mess up the whole system? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like capitalism is not what it used to be, because like now the Fed's got pump money.
Well,
right?
Yeah, I think about this question quite a bit too, man. And
When's the end?
my perspective.
Literally.
My perspective is negative yields on the 10-year.
Free market.
Negative yields on the 10-year U.S. Treasury would be a very fine line that investors would have to cross to accept the reserve currency of the world, giving them a negative yield. I mean, like it's the only Treasury yield in the world that has any return with the quality that you're getting, right? Which is
Yeah.
AAA from the U.S. government. If they let that go into negative, man, I think you're probably going to see the beginning of the end of the dollar as a reserve system, as the U.S. as a dominant superpower in the world. Like I think when that happens, it's like the U.S. is like saying, all right, like we know, like, time is up. We're
Yeah, they're
They're
tapping out.
tapping out.
yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, they're tapping
So,
out basically, right?
Mhm.
But I always
Yeah, so-
always felt that it's kind of like an invisible line of confidence in the market, right? It's like like you and I, we understand markets on a level in which you understand that confidence is what drives markets, right?
Yeah.
And when you no longer feel confident in the United States, or when investors no longer feel confident in the United States, I think that's game over for the U.S.
So from my perspective, I actually give the same answer that I gave in 2018. But to back up a second, Rams, you mentioned the whole coronavirus second wave thing, and this is something that you can't fiscal stimulus away, right? Because beforehand, the tools of the Fed would work for things like deleveraging and monetary stimulus and all those things that were within the financial ecosystem, right? It's just showing how fragile the model is, because here something comes out of left field. You can't lower rates that away, right?
Yeah, exactly,
You can't QE that away. So aside from that, I think just we have to defer to history. I mean, what happened with the .com bubble? What happened with 2008? And that was systemic defaults. Okay, so what happens when monetary policy is so easy is that people start to leverage that, right? They start to basically stockpile their debt in order to drive the economy. But there's a certain tipping point where we reach the capitulation point of what that can support. And unfortunately, that's what deleveraging is for, is so that you can start to unwind that debt and restructure and so forth. But it usually, unfortunately, because people are greedy, and the Fed is stimulating this bubble and really fueling it. Exactly, that's really what I was getting at, is that unfortunately this doesn't end as nicely and as easily as it should. It usually ends very violently, and so that's basically what I anticipate. And I was giving this response in 2018. I remember there was a certain trader in particular. I won't mention any names, but Rams, you probably might know who it is. He was basically stocking up on puts in the S&P every fucking week, every week. And then, every once in a while we would have a little bit of a correction. He's like, hey guys, I told you. And I'm like, well, okay, what about like the past 5 weeks when we were just ripping and making new highs, and here you are holding an empty sack with your puts, right? So anybody can sit here and say that, oh, the stock market's going to crash. I have another buddy, kind of a doomsday kind of guy. He's like, oh, market's going to crash. And of course, every time there's this nice correction, he chimes in and says, oh, I told you. I'm like, okay, did you trade it? Did you make it actionable? So here, that's the thing, is like, if you're calling these market collapses, you can say there's going to be a recession and be 100% right. Okay. But the question is, how are you positioning yourself to take advantage of that?
Exactly. No, and I definitely think you're right. And I think that one of the things is that the whole unwinding and the whole deleveraging of the free money that's been happening, right, since the 2008 crisis, we all felt like, 2019, 2020 was kind of the time where people were starting to do that, right? Interest rates were like, and they were coming up at the beginning of the last year. Like people were saying, like, we're on the cusp of like the next big crisis will be a big one, right? Now it kind of came. But the thing is that it came, but the default that was supposed to happen is not happening because the economy is in the lifeline, right? They keep supporting that lifeline. I feel like the whole economy right now is like weekend at Bernie. Right?
It's funny that you mentioned that, because some companies have gone under. Hertz,
wasn't it Macy's?
Macy's,
so-
JCPenney's.
Yeah. So this,
But they were hanging on for dear life
That's
to
the thing.
begin with. So it's good that we
so
just rip that Band-Aid off.
Exactly, just accelerated whatever was gonna happen anyways, right? Like put you out of your misery. Thank you.
So how fucked up is this, Rams? I mean, like, there's literally 5 companies holding up the whole fucking S&P 500.
Yeah.
Right.
And
And those are like the new too big to fail companies from like 2008. Like all the banks were like too big to fail. Now you throw the banks in the too big to fail pile, plus these fucking 5 tech companies, and these are all the throwing some energy companies in there too. And these are the companies that's basically the representation of the entire market. And everybody
Not the
else,
500 anymore.
everybody else is like, hey, fuck it, too bad, buddy.
That's right. The way.
And the craziest thing about those companies, when you think about big tech, is that they're the best position to take advantage of this crisis right now.
Of course.
Them.
Everybody's where on their phones, bro, shopping.
Exactly.
When they have
Amazon
nothing to do, bro. When they have nothing to do, mass consumerism.
That's the thing. Contact tracing. Who's gonna put that forward? Google, right? Apple. We're talking about Amazon that's building a supply chain logistic for vaccines, right? We're talking about like Microsoft that's just want to take hold of the whole work from home phenomenon. So like they're just so much positioned to take advantage of that, and they have the cash to do it. So that's how crazy it is now.
Yeah, they're like
they're invincible.
Bro, they're countries.
So, yeah, not only do they have the cash, they have the entire government fucking backing any of their projects and any of their debt. Like they cannot do anything wrong. Like even if they make the fucking worst business decisions ever, the government will be there to bail them out.
Yeah, I mean,
the fan printer going.
Yeah, that's all you see on Twitter. Just a.
Each of these companies has more than the GDP of most countries, actually, right? So my question for you, Rams, is how do you see this whole socioeconomic geopolitical situation right now affecting the wealth gap, right? Because we see these rich companies are only getting richer off of this. If you look at the chart of Netflix and Amazon, for example, it didn't really retrace that much, even with the coronavirus, right? Yeah. So how do you see this accentuating the wealth gap that we already had?
It is getting worse because what you have those companies that are getting richer. The value of these companies are keep going higher and haven't been hit as much. But if you look at the general wealth gap of society, right, those companies are owned by people that are usually based in San Francisco that went to Stanford, that have a vision of what's going on, and they're leaving behind a lot of people, right? That's one of the things when you think about, just in terms of like politics, right? The people that are being left behind are those that were left behind 10 years ago, right? Whatever you do and however you put it, they're still the ones hurting. So it's accelerating that movement because, we know we have maybe automation that's going to come in like 40 years, right? We know 100%. That we're going to have something like, Facebook going to VR and maybe we're going to all live in the VR world. But, who's really benefiting from that? Not the
Ready Player One.
Yeah. Exactly. One of the greatest book I've actually read.
It's good, huh?
I can actually attest to this because having lived in California, you see these people that talk on their soapbox all day, and they're talking from a multi-million-dollar mansion surrounded by a big wall, just saying, and lots of private security, so they can basically say whatever they want when maybe 40 or 50 kilometers away from them, we have these shanty towns of the very illegal immigrants they say that they support, but these people are trapped into a world where they can't succeed. And there's just no way that they can succeed. And these people are benefiting off the backs of these poor humans. Exactly. And this is a human rights issue, in my opinion, that they're somehow absconded from the responsibility of this, even though they're benefiting of it off of it. And they're just insulated within their ivory towers. And they can sit here and lecture us all day, but when you sit and look at the reality, it's a very stark, hypocritical context.
Yeah, no, exactly. And when you look at what's been going on, is that a simple example is that you have all these tech executives. What they do with their own children, they don't put them in front of computers. They don't put them in front of screens for until they're 11. But what do? They market those products to the same people, right, on the other side of the train rack, right? So you have something like coronavirus. We know in the States, even in Montreal, it's been disproportionately affecting more Black people, for example, right? Like these and those companies, what will happen is that they'll benefit from that in terms of okay, well, we're going to help you, but we're going to sell you a new product, right? We're going to help you, but we're going to position ourselves that, there's no competition that's going to come in, right? And what happens is that you have those guys, for example, you can have Mark Zuckerberg, you can have Jack Dorsey. Maybe Jack Dorsey is turning a little bit more kumbaya right now, but the reality is when they made those companies at first, right? They were just thinking about making, cool products. They were just thinking making.
Dude, they took an advantage of the opportunity that was offered to them, and they created value for people. I mean, like, as much as you hate Zuckerberg or Jack Dorsey, they created tech companies that created so much value for people, and that's why they're in the position that they are. And
But the question is, when you think about that, when you say
Is it value, though?
Exactly. What is value? Because
It's not value.
is advertising in terms of those companies. Is
well,
that value for the people?
they created value for the people who use their medium as advertising. So, I mean, I get where you're coming from, but I don't
It's
really.
value towards an empty system.
I mean, what I'm saying is, I'm as a user, yes, okay, maybe if Google is better because I get Google Maps or I get this or I get that, but how does that help my own wealth, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
If I don't-
that's the thing. I mean, I don't necessarily agree with, like, hating on the people who got super wealthy from creating a service.
No, not at all.
No,
created
I
value
don't hate
for
them for
people.
what they did. I mean, fuck it, I would have done it too. But I'm just analyzing the social ramifications of
Exactly,
these terrible
exactly.
products that they made. And
Exactly.
numerous studies have pointed out the social maladies that they create. We're living in the most social society on the that we've ever been.
Well,
However, people are the loneliest they've ever been. Suicide rates are as
definitely.
much or exceeded the values that they were
Well,
since the Great Depression.
I guess
This
that's
is
just
how
like a
miserable
cause-effect
people are.
relation. It's just a cause-effect relationship of the product that they've created. Because I really think that when they started this off, I mean, like, nobody was thinking that this is going to make people more lonely or whatnot, right? It's just a
Well,
byproduct.
they're on record as saying that they had no idea what it was doing.
Exactly. But the fact is, once they found out, they didn't do anything because there was like, what?
Exactly,
It's gonna hurt
exactly.
our bottom line.
Okay.
It's gonna
Let's
hurt
take
our
a
revenue,
step back here.
Shareholder value is gonna go down.
Let's take a step back here and say, from your perspective,
Yeah.
if you've gone to that level, would you begin to develop a moral backbone and say, "Hey, I need to take my software and my wealth and help all the other people"?
But wait.
You know what?
Okay,
Because-
let me take this
Go ahead,
first
Dennis.
because
Yeah, go ahead,
I
Dennis.
may
Yeah, go
or
ahead.
may not do that, but at least I would
Yeah.
not be hypocritical about it. I wouldn't sit here and preach to you about human rights and values and things like that
That's
if I'm profligately taking abuse over you, your family, and the entire human race.
Yeah,
That's
and
one
then
thing I
you
would.
have to-
But that's the thing. It's
Go ahead.
like once you're a billionaire, you have to know when to tap out.
But it's also, it's also
why?
more than that.
Why should you tap out? I
No,
mean,
it's
like,
also
But
more
tap
than that.
out into the good part, like because when you're doing the malice and knowingly doing the malice, that's when you're wrong.
I don't
It's also more than
necessarily.
that. It's also more
Sorry,
than
go
that.
ahead, Rams, go
Think
ahead,
about it.
Rams.
Think
guys,
about it for a second. Think
isn't
about it for a
this
second.
is
Let
It's
Ram
all about-
speak here.
Think about it for a second. Like, really, when you think about it, those companies are basically monopolies, right? If you look at
Yep.
Google, in terms of search, in terms of advertising, they own like more than 90%, right? If you look at Facebook, in terms of social media, they own like a lot of it,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
If you look at all these companies that have monopolies, Amazon has monopolies.
Yep.
So
Yep.
at the end of the day, if they want to turn around and say, you know what, I'll give back to the community and make a dent to actually, level the
Yep.
playing field, no one's gonna come after them. Their competitive advantage won't go away. They're too far ahead. Like no company can come after them and say, you know what, we'll compete with you because we're rootless and we don't care. They're already on top and they're not gonna go anywhere.
But the purpose of business is to maintain your competitive advantage. So why would you give that up?
Well,
Because
which
you have
is
a monopoly.
why the federal government
and a
needs to step
monopoly
in.
is a good business.
Exactly.
A
But the
monopoly is
federal
a-
government, I'm really in support of Trump here when he said repeal 230, the Section 230, and to break up these monopolies because that's what Theodore Roosevelt did.
But
right,
the
with
question
JP
of
Morgan.
why he repealed it was different, though. He didn't repeal it because he thinks it's not fair. He repealed it because Twitter came after him, though. That's different.
Okay.
Well, it is, but why is Twitter so slanted to the left? And there's numerous evidence of this. They're actively going after conservatives and
No,
not
but you
holding
can't-
the leftists
you
to the
can't-
same standards.
You can't delete somebody. That's like
No,
too
you
much
can't
power.
delete somebody.
No.
You can just hold them to the standard
depends.
of facilitating free speech.
Can you?
No,
can
but
you
people
delete it?
obviously are just gonna leave if it makes no sense.
But that's the
Like,
question.
people-
It
can make
already
that
doesn't make
decision
any sense, and
themselves.
people are still there.
That's the thing. If
Yeah.
you make it more sensible, will it make
But at the same
will
time, you
people
can't
leave or
cut
not?
somebody.
Like all I'm saying is that like if you're a company and you have values, right, and the values has to be made clear. It has to be transparent for anyone, right? And if there's no bias, there's no bias, right? And I think it's more of a question not of left or right, because at the end of the day, these are two extremes on the spectrum, right? So the
Yes.
thing is, if
Question
you
of
have clear,
boundaries.
exactly, if you have clear guidelines and you don't respect the guidelines, I'm sorry, but free
They're not.
speech. free speech is not about the fact that you can stay or not on my platform. Free speech is if you say something, you won't be persecuted for that, right? So I can kick you out if you don't respect those boundaries and whatever
Yeah,
you decide to
because
do.
that's
So
After that,
then they need to be
because it's a
respected
platform.
equally.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You need to be respected equally.
Exactly.
Right? It
but
doesn't
then-
matter who's saying what, as long as they stay within those guidelines, that needs to be adhered to. And that's
100%.
fine if they have outspoken rules about that, which they do, but
Yeah.
they're not enforcing them equally.
But then again, the fact that they did not kick out Trump for what he said,
But he's the president.
technically because
With-
he's the president, you're saying
It,
But would you
it,
kick
it
out-
doesn't matter.
Would you kick off a president?
well, the thing is, you're saying
It-
a precedent. He's saying a precedent by tweeting, right? That's what I'm saying. Like he's setting a precedent by tweeting. That has never been done before. Which means that-
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But it also
That's pretty
speaks to his
fucking cool.
success too, because and don't get me wrong, guys.
Accessibility to the people.
I will extend you an olive branch, Rams, here, because I was fucked in a ZB trade one time because of a Trump tweet, right? So I'm serious.
No.
And
goes
you know, this is a
both
guy
ways.
who I'm.
It goes
Listen,
both ways.
you know me. I openly support Trump. I'm a Trump guy, but I don't think it's fair that Elon Musk could have to deal with the SEC for saying that shit on Joe Rogan and you know, making the tweet about his stock going up or whatever. I don't think that he should get lambasted by by the regulatory bodies, and Trump can say all this shit that directly affects markets on Twitter, unregulated. This is why press conferences exist, right?
Exactly.
That was the forum for the president to speak to the people, and I will give you this: that I don't think it's fair that he gets to do it and nobody else can.
Exactly, and the problem is that you're setting a precedent for any president after that, and that's the thing.
Correct.
And I will say, man, like, you know, and I know you're transporting, and I have respect for you for a long time. You know, for me, and we had discussions about that. But for me, what it is that pretty much everybody's scared of Trump, because what happens is that if whatever Biden gets elected or whatever, and then another president comes,
Sleepy Joe.
and then
Sleepy Joe.
but he's on the left, let's say, and he's like a super democratic, socialist, and he says a bunch of shit. Well, the conservatives will turn about and say, Twitter, kick him out. But they won't kick him out because they haven't done that before. You're setting a precedent. You need to be transparent about what you're doing, right?
Well, correct. And I'll give you another example when, Hillary with the emails and all that, what she did, actually having worked in the security field, what she did was a profligate violation of OPSEC regulations. So now people in the intelligence community are like, fuck it. If she can get away with it, well, I can too, right? So it sets a precedent for other people, and it makes it harder for the regulators to do their job.
But yeah, big tech won't do anything until they're regulated. Until the DOJ comes in and goes with the antitrust case, they won't do it.
How do you see that panning out? How do you see regulations affecting these platforms, or if it's possible?
Exactly.
I think the biggest problem with that, and once again, I'm not a law expert, is that you have those products that are free to the consumer, but they're just not good for the market, right?
Well, technically they're not free. You're paying with your data.
You're paying with your data, but as a user, you're not paying with your money. So, like, just
right from the user, the value acquisition is different because you feel like you're not paying out of your pocket. So to you, it doesn't feel like it costs anything. But to the tech companies, your data is fucking valuable. It's how they build all of this technology that knows exactly
100%.
where you are, what you need, and market that shit right to you, right?
No, 100%.
So to you, it's perceived as like, I'm not paying anything, so fuck it, I'm going to use it. But to them, it's like, thank God you're using my shit.
Yeah, but I
know
just
what I
mean like in terms of the law, right? When you look at like how it's been done before, the idea is that it was anti-competitive because, the consumer was always worse off at the end, right? For example, if you had like, I don't know, if you had like Standard Oil, they had a cartel and they own like the monopoly, right? Like they could charge any price they wanted, right? If you had something like, Microsoft that had Internet Explorer, maybe it was a worse product than Netscape, but the fact that it came shipped with the operating system, like it wasn't good for me as a consumer, right? If I'm on Google, I can go on Bing. Nothing, helps me. There's nothing wrong with that. Google doesn't get shipped with anything else than maybe Android, right? So as a consumer, I'm not necessarily worse off, but it's anti-competitive because, like you said, the data is key. The data that they have just make it so that no other competitor can come in and, get in the market and sell me a product, because I will always say with Google. But at the end of the day, I'm still, as a user, my experience is not hindered by what they're doing, and that's the issue with it. I feel like there should be, they should come after those guys, but for depending on the case, right? For every company is different, but will it happen? I don't know, and maybe they'll have to look at the bylaws to make it happen.
Do you feel that these companies control so much power in Washington that it's pretty much impossible for them to change it, even if they wanted to change it?
So, but here comes the thing, right? When companies are almost as powerful as governments, they start being the governments.
Well, it's almost as if these companies, because they're so big and powerful, they wield so much influence over the government that it's almost...
They're trying to make the governments yield, basically.
Exactly, exactly.
I actually, I see Chase speaking, but I don't know, Chase, are you on mute?
Probably.
Oh,
yeah, he's on mute.
Yeah, he's on mute.
I see him speaking, but we're not hearing. Okay, anyway. I mean, my take on it is like,
what's the thing?
Because like, look, and the example I gave, and this was years ago, right? And I don't remember politics being as so polar as it is now. I remember in like 2000s, right, when it was Bush and Kerry, I guess. You could have a conversation as a Republican with a Democrat and not have to worry about getting beaten down, right? It would get a little heated. It would get a little heated, but you can still have a conversation. You just can't have conversations anymore, right?
No.
And the thing that I would always point to people is, okay, we live in this false dichotomy, and you could prove it's a false dichotomy just by looking at the donors, the campaign contributors. This is public information, right? And you see the Goldman Sachses and the insurance companies and the banks, they're all sponsoring both parties, differing amounts, but they're sponsoring both parties. So it's like, if you really believe in this candidate, why would you be openly supporting his opponent? And that's because they don't care.
No,
they don't care who's in office.
Because the thing at the end, what happened with politics, well, in my mind, is that you used to be on different spectrums, right? So, for example, okay, like, let's say you voted for Trump, you're a Trump supporter.
Politics, they should be the ones that be paid the least.
But the thing about it is that it became identity
term
politics.
Limits.
It became identity politics. That's the problem.
Yes, that's true.
Exactly.
No, and
Before,
okay, I'll give you
I was gonna say before, like, you had the Northwestern Republican, which was, maybe conservative on taxes, but on social issues was, going maybe a little bit more on the right. You know what I mean? But like now, if you're put into one category, you need to check all these boxes on abortion, on gun laws, on everything, on this and that. Right? You can be a Democrat and be racist. Like, there's not, like, it happens. You can be like a blue voting Democrat and be racist as fuck. You say, I voted for Obama, and next thing you know, I won't let my white daughter date a black guy because he's shit. And when I say a guy, I call the police on him. Like, that happens. But the problem is that now the way the discourse is being done is that it's all about identity politics, right?
Yeah, and I think that all this talk of racism and everything, like, I remember back in the 90s, one of my inspirations to get into martial arts, which I've done for like 25 years now, was watching Blade by Wesley Snipes. And I didn't give a shit that he was black. I just saw an awesome superhero in my mind who was using real martial arts, and it inspired me to do it, right? And there was never a question in my mind. We're friends. I never once saw you as a black dude. You were always just my friend. Right. And now I feel that there's so much pressure to see people as this is my black friend. Right.
Yeah. But it's also and it's also a problem about, like, let's say I say Black Lives Matter. I mean, if you voted for Trump, you can say Black Lives Matter. It's not impossible. And if someone could say All Lives Matter, which I don't agree at all, by the way, but like if someone could say that and vote blue, vote Democrat. Right. And that's the thing, because, if they put you in a box with all those checks you need to check, you're going to start checking those checks. You're going to be like, you know what? All the people that voted that way, they think about that. They think about this. They think about that. So I'll start thinking about this. I'll start thinking about that. I'll start thinking about this. I have people in my family that believe in the Second Amendment, right? That believe in the right to bear arms, but like they're black. It's not because you're black that you're not going to bear arms, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So you need to break that, to deconstruct that. And the problem with the current political environment and the current way that social media works is that it does the opposite. It really separates this thing. And now how we're going to get back together into that state of, like, we're all normal.
Not only that,
I don't know.
not only that, but it puts people in their own echo chambers, right?
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
instead of you and me maybe having slightly different views, but being able to hold a rational discourse as human beings and not beat the shit out of each other,
Yeah.
now we're put into our own echo chambers, which only exacerbate those differences of opinion. And now all of a sudden we're over here.
Yeah. No, 100%. That I totally agree with you on that.
That's crazy, man. Raz, man, I have to ask you about your position at Deloitte. Since the coronavirus thing, you guys been working at home, right? Are you still working, or are you like how do they call it? Laid off
I'm working.
or whatever?
I'm working.
So you're still working like full time, but working from home?
Yeah, exactly.
So
Exactly.
so I wanted to talk to you about this topic about the new office.
Yeah.
The new office and the need to even commute to the fucking regular office.
Yeah.
Like where do you see that going in the future, man? I mean, like the whole coronavirus thing. I mean, like I think we've talked about this before about
Yeah.
how like transitioning from physically being in an office space and converging to one location to do your job with your colleagues or whatnot. But obviously, I think the coronavirus kind of like fast tracked everything, and now it's making remote working more, socially acceptable, I guess. What's your take on this, man? Where do you see this in the future?
Yeah, sure. I'll say that, and I definitely want to know your thoughts on that. So, I definitely think that, like you said, it really accelerated the whole movement, right? You have, even for us, you have clients that were a lot more, hesitant about working from home, and now they've seen the benefit. They're like, you know what, actually, it's actually great, right? So for us, Deloitte as a company, like we were used to getting to working remotely, to work at the client, to work at the office, to work from home. It's something that we've always been, adamant on doing. We've always been flexible on that. So as for us, it hasn't been that big of a change. The only change is now, maybe let's say before I could work maybe 1-2 days from home. Now I'm working all the time from home. Now, how will that change in the future, and what will happen in the future? I feel like there's maybe 2 or 3 things that for me I want answers for, which I don't have them yet. The first one being that I believe that eventually what will happen is that maybe 100% working from home will be more prevalent, but will not become the norm. And 100% working at the office will never be the same again. That will never be the standard again. So what you'll have probably like a mix of the two, right? So maybe
hybridization.
Hybridization.
Exactly. You work maybe 40%, 2 days a week from home, 3 days a week at the office, just to make sure the whole office space is not used. But one thing that could happen. Oh yeah, you want to say something? Go ahead.
No, it's like on your point there. I mean, like I do feel like we're gonna get to a point where it's gonna kind of be like maybe like a 60-40 split or an 80-20 split. Where
my best friend, his dad has a like $150 million company, and he did the same. He reduced to one office, and he put on a schedule his employees on shifts basically.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you. Like
so
this is what I've been waiting for, right?
I mean,
because like I can actually speak to this. Chen, I have a little bit of a dissertation on this. So Chen, if you want to just chime in, I'll let you go because I'm putting my hand up here.
I mean, my take on this was I feel like the physical office is not going to disappear because there's an absolute need for teams to get together, to converge, to do that team building in a physical space. But you don't have to be there like 5 days a week. Maybe 1 day a week will be sufficient. You can work from home for the rest of the time. Like I think there's still a physical need to meet your colleagues and have that team building, but it's not going to be like the way it was in the past.
But hold on, Danny. Just before you start, I just want to add something because I know you've had experience with that. I know you had experience with that. Yeah. So I just want to say, like, and I agree with you. I agree with you, Phil. I agree with you, Chen. I feel that one thing that could happen though is that having a physical office space might become a perk at one point.
Yeah, a perk. Yeah, exactly, right?
You know what I mean?
And it actually got me thinking this, okay? Imagine if you're a fucking big company, right? And you had like a fucking 20,000 square foot office. Now you don't fucking need that space anymore, so you can downsize. What's going to happen to the office real estate market?
Yeah,
right? What's gonna replace it? Here's the fucked up thing, okay? What was gonna replace it would be a fucking service like WeWork. But what fucking happened to WeWorks?
Whoops.
Right? Because think of it like this, okay? Would you need to have a
But that's just because they
office-
manage their money really shitty. Right?
Okay, the whole company was a shit show, man.
Right, but
Yeah,
anyways,
It was just like-
my point is this, okay? My
Yeah.
point is this.
But it's a great idea.
My point is this: a traditional large office with like 5,000 employees, they wouldn't need that office space
No,
anymore.
exactly.
And if they do need office space, it's probably just to converge everybody there for like maybe one day a week or whatever, right? And so
Yeah.
there'll still be a physical need for an office space. But do you need that fucking big office? No, you'll
No,
probably move towards more of like a what's that model that WeWorks use, like a social subleasing model.
Yeah.
Right, which would make sense because look, if I needed an office space for my team to meet up once a week, I'll probably just sublease an office space, right? That would make sense. But when I thought of this, and it made me laugh, was that the fucking WeWork shit show, which, if you think of it now, would really make sense in the future, but the way they managed it, they fucked up the whole
They
thing.
fucked it up.
They fucked it up so bad that now when you're looking at like, man, I need a fucking subleasing office space.
All right. So,
All right, Danny, go
if
ahead.
I could,
Yeah,
Go ahead, Danny.
So I can speak to this whole issue from a very personal perspective because I've worked remotely from home or whatever since like 2015, right? And it's kind of a double-edged sword because due to the fact that you're already home, you could basically work ad infinitum, which a lot of times I did, right? So it's a personal thing that's on you to manage your home life and your work life, right? That's kind of like the first issue. The second issue is that, I actually did take a job
Manage
recently
your
at
home
City.
life.
And I took a job. I don't know if you heard, Rams, I took a job at City as a senior data scientist. So,
Big up on that, by
I
the
went,
way.
appreciate it, mate. Cheers. But I worked for like
Did you
1
say
month at the
mate?
office.
You said
Yeah,
mate.
cheers,
that's-
mate.
You said mate,
Cheers.
man. Let him be.
Yeah, isn't that what you guys say here in Quebec? Come on, man, give me props. I'm trying to learn the culture here, okay?
We don't say that, but it's
Trying
fine.
to blend in. Trying to
We
blend
don't
in.
say that, but it's cool.
Cheers, La.
Well,
Cheers,
well,
La.
we do now. We do
Cheers,
now.
lad.
Mon ami, okay, mon ami.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right. So,
Sorry to jump in there. Go ahead, Danny.
so I started working at the Tampa office, and I realized like none of the people on my team were in Tampa because this being a very, the company is the third largest bank in the U.S., right? So we have offshore branches, we have branches all over the U.S., and everybody who I worked with was not even in Tampa anyway. Right. And even there's one dude that was, and he's in a completely different building, in a completely different area, in a completely different division. And I would never see him anyway. Right. So when the coronavirus hit like a month after I got hired, we are all remote, and I did not see any difference in the productivity or the structure of what we did and how the workflow went. Right. If anything, actually, I had a lot of meetings with people offshore. Right. So the time zones didn't always align. So my meetings would be at like 7. And you know me, I'm an early riser anyway. So the time that I would be commuting to work or commuting home, I could just devote to like those meetings. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So at City, there's a lot of criticism about the work from home thing in terms of like the productivity and all that. What we found at City was that productivity had increased so much that they actually gave us an extra day off. Right. Whatever the last holiday was like 3 or 4 weeks ago, like Memorial Day or Veterans Day or whatever it was. They actually gave us the Friday off. And so we had a 4-day weekend. Right. It was that profligate of an increase in productivity. And now they're trying to phase us back. But it's like, I think everybody is starting to realize it's like, wait a minute, my story is not unique. Right. A lot of these teams, a lot of this, the culture that we have in terms of like, look at Ghost Squawk, right? I have Chen in Montreal. I'm in Montreal only for the moment. I'm in, Tampa right now. Well, permanently. We got Chase over in fucking Kentucky. We have Johan in fucking, he's in Belgium. right?
Belgium, yeah.
And so it's like I don't even know if I'm ever going to meet these people, right? But
Oh no,
work
we
just
will,
fine.
we will.
I'm sure we will, but the point is, if we didn't,
we're
it would
gonna do that boat party. We're gonna do that Christmas boat party.
exactly.
Hey, man,
But
you gotta aim high. You gotta aim high. You
that's
gotta aspire somewhere.
That's gonna be because we want to, not because we have to.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that this is really showing
that's
people.
a once per year office meeting.
Exactly.
That's a mandatory show up.
This situation is really showing people like, wait a minute, we bitch all the time about carbon emissions and all that. Why are we forced to drive to the office in the first place? If all businesses can be run like this, right? Why are we forced to give up our time? I have to devote an hour in the morning to getting ready and drive and all that, whereas all that can be spent productively.
And on that point, and I agree with you to a certain extent, where like, for a lot of companies, going 100% remote will become the norm, right? Well, they'll happen, right? I think one of the biggest companies having that physical location will become an advantage, a little bit like Chen said. Because, for example, at Deloitte, okay, the way we work and that's how we've always worked, right? Our offices, there's about 1,500 people that work out of the Montreal office. There's not 100, and there's not 150, 1,500 people. And there's not 1,500 places at the office. There's about maybe, I think, half or 3/4 of that. The thing is, we don't have assigned desk. So whenever we come into the office...
Yeah, you just log in wherever.
Exactly. You have your laptop.
Yeah, we have that model too. Yeah.
Right? So for us, it's always been like that. But having that presence to maybe meet clients or maybe get together will become a perks for employees at bigger companies where the culture is hard to keep on, right? For something like Ghost Squawk, you guys, there's not a lot of you, so you guys can keep that culture. And as you grow, you'll be able to keep that culture because it was natively remote. But for a company that was, physical 100% for the last maybe 10 years, to go 100% remote and keep the same culture is going to be harder. Now, my question is, and, Chen, you talked about commercial real estate. I'm also super interested about what's going to happen to residential real estate.
Oh,
because
yeah.
You know what I mean? If I'm working remotely, I don't have to rent that, condo downtown that's like 400 square foot.
Yeah, to be close to my job.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now you can work from anywhere you want. So you can go down in the country, having
a chalet somewhere.
Yeah, you can go. Well, especially in Canada, you can go to a place that's a little bit further outside of the city, and it becomes a little bit more affordable.
Exactly, more affordable. In touch with nature. You can go hiking on the weekends or anything.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. I got in touch with Thaisa, and she was telling me she was selling condos in 2 days, man. She was turning them over in 2 days in Toronto.
Wow,
that's good.
Yeah,
still to this day.
And she's been like hustling, hauling ass, meeting clients because the market is so hot because the Bank of Canada slashed rates to a quarter.
Yeah.
Right.
So what does that mean to people like us? We're like, fuck it, take advantage of it.
Exactly.
Well, I mean that's what's happening is that we in Canada, we haven't solved the problem of attracting foreign money into the Canadian real estate market. And with the downturn, it just exacerbated the problem, right? And so if you're in the real estate game, right, your clients are calling you up trying to fucking, get any property that you can.
And that's true because there's been talks about like how, the real estate market will see like a, 3 to 5 to 15% downturn. I was like, yo, like for who? Because if I'm an investor and I have money on the line, for me, everything's a bargain right now. It's a discount, everything's an outlet right now. So I can buy.
Well, I actually thought about that risk, right? And I really think that the risk is gonna be on that home investor who's got like 2, 3, 4 houses with like a 9-to-5 job, and if the economy was to take a second downturn and your tenants lose their job and they can no longer afford to pay their rent, you're going to be stuck forking the mortgage for your second, third, fourth property. And that's when, the whole, 10, 15, 20% correction in the housing market may arise. But the way it's looking right now, man, it's looking like fucking, if you got cash, go fucking get your second mortgage, your third mortgage. Get your sixth mortgage if you can. Just fucking buy everything right now because.
But the problem is, Rams. What do you see in terms of this in a bubble forming, right? Because isn't this a repeat of 2008, right? Where like your bartender is getting his fifth house?
This Canadian real estate was bubbling for like the last 15 years.
Yeah, but the thing is, the difference between 2008 and what's happening right now is that the the conditions to actually get the proven mortgage is harder. And actually,
yes.
there's a thing from the CHRA, which is like the home mortgage real estate assurance.
Yeah.
They actually gonna make it harder as of July 1st to get a mortgage from now. So the individual, like you said, the 9 to 5, the people that will invest in real estate, it's gonna be harder for them. Like I actually bought a property a few months ago, just to let you know. So
there you go.
I'm skin in the game. So
congratulations, man.
Thanks,
Congrats, man.
Thanks. So actually, like, for me to get another property will become harder, right? It'll become harder. But for the investor that's been doing it, that can leverage the property, that can take a second mortgage, that can take a credit line against, collateral that he has, it's not harder. It'll actually be easier because there'll be less people fighting for the same properties.
I don't necessarily think it's less people. I really think that the rules that the CMHC put in place, they really affect the middle to lower end spectrum of the Canadian population. And it's really, those are the people who are struggling to buy their first home because prices are so high and they just don't meet the minimum requirements to buy their first home, so that they just basically get shut out of the market.
There is a lot of discouraging factors. For example, like my fiance now, like she bought a condo as an investment, and she's hit with a welcome tax. Whereas, like, say for example, if she had a kid or was married, she would. So here's the thing, because single people just have so much money to throw around, right? Yeah. And so I feel like the economic circumstances really discourage like that new coming investor, right? They're in favor of somebody who already has that momentum.
Right, and if you take a step back and you look at the problem in Canadian real estate market, is that it's either you have several properties and then you have access to credit and capital to take advantage of this, or you're essentially a foreign investor with a lot of money and you're coming in and you can buy at any price. And so who is affected? The people who are affected are the people who are like, I just got out of high school. I got a college degree. I'm in the job market right now. I'm trying to find, that $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year job. And you're trying to fucking save money for your first home, and you can't do it because you need to save like 100 G's.
No, exactly. And that's why I don't think the bubble will be exacerbated as it was before, because it removes a lot of players in the market, right? But it won't turn negative, because the players that can stay in the market will stay in the market, and they'll buy even more shit.
Those players have been foreigners for the most part. I mean,
to be fair, Canada's been pretty good about taking control of that, right? Yeah. Especially here in Quebec.
A bit late.
In certain provinces,
I agree with you, Phil. It's been a bit late, but at least they're like trying to take control, because in Vancouver, you see a lot of like Canadian-born people who are forced homeless, right? Because they can't afford to buy homes in their own country.
And that's a problem that I'm trying to address, in that I really don't think the fucking government gives a fuck about the middle to lower class spectrum, because if you understand how the game works, right? Everybody in Canada gets their wealth built off of their home, right? If you own a home, your home increases in value. Your job's not your wage is not going up year over year, but your house is, and your house allows you to spend more because you get, because of the increase in value, you get more credit. If you take a look at the average wage increase in Canada, it has not gone up to keep up with inflation.
Yeah, and to that point, it's like look at what we teach in our courses, right? Inflation is good for the economy so long as it's within certain bounds, and if wage inflation keeps up with that, which it hasn't.
It hasn't for the last 25 years.
It hasn't since 1970. In US.
So when you
look at since 1970.
So when you look at where is wealth being created for the ordinary Canadian, it's in the fucking home. You own a home. Your home increases in value. You get the ability to borrow more. You can borrow more. You can spend more. That's where wealth is. That's where wealth.
Phil, you've been quiet. Right? I know you have. I know you have thoughts on this.
That's why I'm listening. I'm listening to every point now.
That's why I'm saying, man. Like the way the way the Trudeau government has been handling this, man, I think they really fucking mismanaged this for the ordinary middle class, lower class Canadians who are struggling to get into the housing market. They're really getting pushed. They're getting fucking pushed all the way out to like Bromont. Or to fucking,
sure.
Like you got to go really, really far out of the
Chambly
city
or something like that.
To really find affordable homes, right? And that's the only
Rashadigi, gotta represent.
Okay, you know your stuff.
That's
Shit, bro.
that's the only way the ordinary Canadian is going to be able to get into the game, because you're not going to be able to afford, especially in markets like Toronto and Vancouver. Fucking forget about it.
But that's the thing. So maybe the whole thing about working remotely will help that, because if you can afford Toronto, like, what's the point if you're working 100% from home all the time? Like, people that currently in Montreal, live in Griffintown in a little, 450 square foot apartment, they're struggling right now because they can't take their elevators. Like, they have to wait 100 minutes because it's one at a time. They have to go to the park. There's no park for a mile away. But
the ones who could work at home could take advantage of that and actually live far away.
Exactly. So maybe it'll be an
opportunity. I see where you're getting to.
Exactly. The homeowners will have this opportunity to say, you know what, maybe I'll live in Chateauguay, because in Chateauguay it has a nice yard, nice dogs.
That's exactly what I did, Rams. That's why I mentioned Chateauguay specifically, because we haven't been speaking for it's been a minute, right?
Yeah, it's been a minute.
And I'm like, look, I work remotely. I could get a flat in fucking Montreal for $1,400 to $2,000, or I could live, get a nice yard where I wake up to the geese every morning with a farm in front of me. That's literally what I had for $700 a month.
It's crazy.
Right? So it's why since I work remote,
all right.
why would I not do that thing?
Let's be fair for all the listeners out there. Chateauguay is right beside a fucking Indian reserve where everything is 50% off from regular city prices. That's the real reason why you're out there. Let's keep it real. Keep it real to the viewers.
You know what? They're great
in
people
fairness,
too,
play the game, man. Play the game, right?
In fairness, this was a financial decision driven by a lot of factors, so I will give you that. Not only that, they make their own wine. They make their own wine, which is amazing.
I know it's a great community to get to know at the same time. So you get
and listen, you have the Mercy Inn, which is takes you straight into downtown basically. And at that point, I had a car, so it was fine. Admittedly, you do have to have a car. The public transportation is going to take you 2 hours to ride the bus downtown.
Yeah,
so that's not advantageous. So if you have a car, this is the place to go, and it's the best kept secret of Montreal, in my opinion.
No, for sure. And your experience is not even that different to what you would have had. It's not like you have a lesser experience, right? Living in the big.
It's not like living in the ghetto. It was a very nice neighborhood. It was rural. It's the only people that went down that road were
own the houses,
right?
Yeah,
exactly. So it was very beautiful. I loved it.
No. So that's cool, man.
That's amazing.
So, living further is going to be more accessible to people who work at home.
Yeah, but right now I live in my fiance's flat, and she lives in Montreal, right? So you hear the sirens and the car horns and the revving of the engines. It's I miss the geese. I wake up in the morning in Chateauguay.
The nature.
Yeah.
I want it back. So man, that's what I'm really fascinated about what's gonna happen to the residential real estate in the mid to long term. What really is gonna happen to the prices? Are we gonna have new hubs that are around Montreal in any city, right? That is further out from the big city.
Actually, since you're in
the smaller communities further out, I think those are good. Those are gonna start looking very attractive.
Yeah.
But also, Ram, since you're kind of in the analytics industry, what do you think about the city of Montreal in general as far as business, right? Because I remember I was reading a lot about it, and it's trying to be this hub of AI, and I'm seeing all these AI startups and companies.
Bro, Montreal is lit.
Dude, I don't see that shit.
I agree. But
I don't see that shit, man. Yo, I'm in AI, man. I run an AI company. I don't see that shit. Yo, Rams, hook me up, man. What you got? You got some insights? Give me some consultation from Deloitte, man. What you got from Deloitte?
Well, to be fair, in particular, they're offering grants and stuff for so please give us your thoughts on that.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I'm further from the AI space. I know it from afar, okay? And I'll tell you that because I have one of my friends that studies he's doing his PhD, so he kind of knows a little bit about it. So, and I've been kind of involved in the startup world a bit, So Montreal is definitely setting itself as a hub for AI, because what you have two universities, right? You have University of Montreal and you have McGill universities that are really pushing for those programs. And within those programs, you have two research labs. The first one is called Ivado, and the second one is called Mila, right? So these ones are really, they're really powerful because you have, for example, Yoshua Bengio, that's one of the biggest names in AI as well. and you have Valerie Pisano, that's one of the biggest names in AI in this space as well, that are like in Montreal really doing a lot of things, right? With that, what you have a lot of like
And now you're
programs.
gonna have Ghost Squawk.
And then you're gonna have a Ghost Squawk, right? And you have a lot of programs that tailor to companies like yours, for example, right? So I can like maybe check that out and maybe like put you up some stuff that I kind of know.
Oh, that'd be fantastic, man! Like, yo, man, I'm kind of getting sick of just fucking douching this. We need some guidance.
No, definitely, because from what I know, and I was more like, I've been involved a bit with fintech, but not AI. So anyway, so we can chat because like I know like a few programs and stuff like that.
Rams, have you ever worked with any public companies?
I don't know if they work with any public companies. I know that there's more like small, like early startups, seed venture startups, I'd say, like to mid.
Yeah.
I would say that. So yeah, so there's a big push for that, and even one thing that they did is that recently they opened a new faculty from University of Montreal that's based in in STEM studies, including AI. So it's becoming even more of a hub, and you have companies like Facebook, you have Google that's really getting established in Montreal because they know there's like a big brain circle of people working on that. So it's really shaping itself as like this AI hub. And I know that the government is really
EA Games too, right?
Yeah, EA Game is there too as well. Like video game has been there for
video games has been here for a while. I mean, like Ubisoft has a headquarters, or they have an office here.
Exactly.
You know what else is interesting is Montreal. I mean, it's still probably partially was a hub for penny stock promotions.
Yeah. I remember a while back, man. Yeah, man. Montreal is really a love-hate city. Like there's things you really fucking love about this city, and then there's things you're just like fuck this city.
In February, let's see how much you guys like the city.
The story behind awesome penny stocks. This Babakin guy, and there was a multiple people involved, but they ended up fleeing the country, and I mean they made billions of dollars. They were one of the guys initially worked for Yahoo back in the day, and this was when you could still spam emails. So they started building lists to blast out and send, and I mean they would have hundreds of millions of dollars to come in these stocks. And where they fucked up is they started getting their own shell companies and buying aged debt and diluting that, basically promoting their own companies and selling stock into it, which you can't do. But I mean, like the story is fascinating. Like you can read about it sometime, but just like how many like international people were involved in trying to track these guys down, and like two of them still have never been found. I heard that they were in.
Cheers to them.
Cheers to them.
Yeah.
Somewhere in like Indonesia, driving a Bugatti Veyron.
Oh, that's the one.
One of these does not look like the other.
Montreal's a great city, man.
Yeah, a lot of big companies come out of Montreal.
But yeah, no, and the thing about Montreal, it's definitely a good place to get established in my mind, because it's not a company that has, it's not a city, sorry, that has a lot of flagship startup
enterprises
that are established. You know what I mean? Like you don't have those big companies, right, that are there and just known, right? You have like good startups that are getting to get known right now. For example, Lightspeed, that's like in payments, right? You have you know what I mean? But in terms of like, for example, AI, there's like a lot to do, especially in the consumer business, right? And another problem.
And also, Rams, I'll ask you another question. Are you aware of the grants that are available to Quebec-based companies, or Montreal in particular, that are in the technology sector? Grants. Because I have heard of that, right? But I don't know like the details.
So for that, I had to talk about. There are grants. There's actually a ministry in Quebec that does grants that's based on research, and well, it's not on research. It has to be companies that works with innovative technologies, right?
We have research. We have innovative
technology.
Right.
I have very innovative technology.
No, and
dude,
you know what?
Actually, dude, I haven't told you our second component. We're translating all of our trading programs into Mandarin, Vietnamese, Spanish, French, Arabic. right?
That's cool.
And the
cool.
best part is that through natural language processing, we can take in any headline from social media or breaking headlines from Reuters and take that headline in a native English format and then spit it back out in Mandarin or in Vietnamese or in anything,
That's cool.
providing risk sentiment signals.
That's cool. But you definitely need to get plugged in the community because like I said, I'm not really close to the AI community, but it's not a big community in Montreal. And that's the beauty of it, right? The thing about Montreal is it's not a big city. Once you start getting a few names and the same name starts coming around, the same things starts coming around. Like if there wasn't that whole lockdown, I would have said like, you need to go to like Startup Fest, for example, right? I went the last 2 years and like I just learned a lot of things just by being there, just by talking to people randomly, right? So once you get plugged into the community, like then it's just a matter of time before like you get a few connections and then shit start happening. So and you already get a product, and you know what I mean? That's like even greater. It's not like you just have an idea and just like.
Well, not only do we have a product, I mean, like we have customers and
exactly.
Bro, you know what's fucked up, man? We started in like March and we've been profitable every single month. Like we were like.
No, I mean, if you look at like our outlays, but bro, like here's the thing: like if you look at our outlays versus our income, it's like insane. Like we pay like our overhead is just for like the Zoom. Right, our server costs.
Our overhead is working from home overhead. Like whatever you need to work from home, work out of a basement, and our revenue.
Charge that electricity. Charge electricity.
Yeah, man. It's no, man. Definitely. If you have any contacts in that space, man, we would love to get connected with some of those people in the AI space.
Definitely,
probably really help us out.
Okay, sounds good. Like I said, like I'm a little far ahead, but like what I'll do is I'll give you a list of things that I know, programs, things, and that you can get in contact with. I think I might know one guy that might be able to.
Yeah. But listen, through that one guy, we can get access to his network, right?
Yeah.
And this is how it goes. You know what I mean? You just spread the word. You talk to people, and it's like you're one of us, right? So we help each other out.
Exactly.
And,
yeah, 100%. 100%. I'll get in touch with you and I'll hook you up.
Just goes from there.
All right, man. I got one last question for you, man. So, fuck, when we getting together, man? When we going for drinks?
Yo, I mean, it's getting nicer.
Restaurants are opening what? Restaurants are
Monday.
when?
Monday.
What, Monday? Is it Monday?
Monday.
Tomorrow?
I heard Monday.
It's tomorrow.
No. Next Monday.
Next Monday.
Next Monday.
22nd. It's the 22nd.
Oh, the 22nd, man.
22nd.
All right, man. So we'll meet you at DDC, like
DDC on the terrace, or anything. Let's just get to a park.
We gotta go to like Nelligan or something. It's a terrace season, right?
Oh, fuck it, man. Let's just go to a park or some shit, man. Yo, we gotta get together.
I forgot you guys were bougie, man. I always go to like Nelligan.
No, man. Yo, fuck that shit, man. Yo. Fuck that shit. We can roll bougie or we can just fucking roll ghetto. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter.
July 1st, my boat will be on the water. Y'all should come down.
If we're allowed.
Yeah, if we're allowed to get out.
If the borders are open.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, you can get in the boat. You can get on the boat. We can go where we want.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Drive that shit down to St. Lawrence.
Yeah, bring it over here.
Yeah, man. Yo, we gotta set something up, man. We gotta call our friend in the DR to join us too, man.
Yes.
No, sorry, not the DR, the Congo.
Dominican Republic.
Congo.
Exactly. I was like, is in Dominican Republic? Oh, damn,
sorry,
man.
Congo Republic.
Like, it's about to be a danger, man. God damn.
But he's here. He's here.
Yeah, I think I saw a picture, right? He was there with his wife.
Yeah, he's here.
Matthew.
Anyways, man, we're long overdue for a get together, man. So fuck it. We'll have to set something up when everything reopens, man.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
It's gonna be crazy. There's man, 2020 is gonna be like the year we're gonna remember where a lot of shit's gonna happen, and for you, it's gonna be the year that y'all launched the product and things been going well. So congrats again, man.
So on that note, Rams, you said 2020 is gonna be the year to remember. Like, what are your keynotes for 2020? Like, what's your sage advice for 2020?
Sage advice. I don't know. Listen, I think that my mindset for the last few weeks has been, I've been pretty adamant about everything that's been going on with the process, man. I've been to the protest in Montreal. I've looked at what happened, with the opportunities that comes with COVID, with everything. I feel like right now is the time for whatever you believe in, and in terms of it could be the economy, it could be more social. Like, start thinking about what's gonna happen 5, 10 years from now, because the changes that are happening now will have ripple
Yes.
effects 5, 10
Very
next
good advice.
years
Yes.
from now. So
I,
like,
I couldn't
where do
agree
you
with you
wanna-
more, man. I couldn't
exactly.
agree with you more.
So you gotta know where you want to
Yeah.
position yourself for what's gonna come
Yeah.
later on, because like jobs that are not created, that still do not exist, will be there 20 years. So how do you make sure that you're there? Like social
Yeah, definitely.
changes that will be there
Yeah.
20 years from now, that started because of what happened, with the protests and the civil unrest right now. Will
Do you have any investment opportunities you're looking at?
investment opportunities? It depends. So I have so a few things, right? So first of all, just from a perspective of what's been happening, I've been really big on esports. I know it's like we haven't talked about it.
Oh man, fuck, shit, yo,
Bro,
there's
20 minutes, 30 minutes?
Okay, yo,
Oh,
man,
bro, I was doing arbitrage on sports betting.
dude, man,
No.
I was like, man, let's
think about
let's
that.
wrap this up, man. But
Yeah,
if you want to
let's-
go for another 30 minutes and talk about fucking esports opportunities, man.
Yo, I got
I'm
that.
down, man. I'm
Yo,
down.
good.
Like
I'm all
we
good.
could
I'm all
join
good.
forces here.
You
All good.
remember earlier when I said to you, I'm like, I wanted to talk to a fucking gamer and just get their perspective about microtransactions and shit like that. It's
Yeah.
because it in the fucking esport gamer's mind, right? Like fucking buying things that are exclusive. Like in certain games, you can get things that are super, super exclusive.
It's its own market.
And they follow the laws of economics, right? Like scarcity,
Yeah.
right? Like you get an item, like a, what they call it, like a legendary item or whatever, and there's only one of it in the whole game. It's a fucking scarce model, right? There's only
exactly.
one of it, and it creates value for that, right? And you'll
So
have
where'd you
people
have-
paying fucking thousands of dollars in real money just to have that item. Like, how crazy is
Imagine,
that?
imagine now you put blockchain into that now, and now you have actually a system that actually can, guarantee that this thing that you have is unique, maybe across more than one game, right?
Yeah.
But the thing about esports for me that's crazy is that, like, first of all, now you have more viewership on finals for something like, Dota, right?
Yeah. There's more
Legends.
in that than in traditional sports.
Exactly, right? And now with what's happening with COVID, that will happen. And now the thing is, people are making money off of it, right? People that
Yeah.
that are in teams that are making banks.
Yeah.
You have like Ninja that at one point was making $500,000 a month, not a year, a month.
Yeah.
When you think about that,
From,
so
from
like,
his streaming deals, yeah, he got the
Exactly.
streaming deal on. I think he moved over to Mixer.
yeah, he moved over to Mixer, so I'm not sure how that's been
Yeah.
working for him. But you have those companies that are really moving in, right? Those business models that are getting there. So I feel like there's like big opportunities on that.
Well,
so.
do you feel like the initial opportunities are gonna be like really real traditional sports with like exclusive streaming rights, advertising rights, naming rights, and things like that?
I would think so.
Branding on clothing, things like that. I mean, like these guys, like these esport gamers. I mean, like they're getting customized swag, like customized keyboards, customized monitors, customized computers with their logos and shit on it.
No,
Right?
exactly.
I mean, like that's the tool. That's the equivalent of a hockey stick to a esport gamer.
Exactly. I think it's like a mix of like, traditional team sport that we've seen, like, basketball or like football or hockey, and something like, I don't know, NASCAR or like F1 where you have sponsorships, right?
Yeah.
So you're part of a team, you get a salary, but also at the same time, you have your own Twitch channel where you can make money on the side. And then, you have people that are just subscribing and giving you like $5 a month for no reason, because they want to see you play, right? So you have that. But from an investor perspective, you have the whole idea of franchises, right? If you have something like League of Legends as a league, and then they're selling franchises, maybe like $20 million, a year later, that was worth 3 times that. It was a 3x return on just having a league, right? So imagine in Montreal, you want to buy a league of like, I don't know, NBA 2K, and then like next thing you know, that league is worth more. You have that as well. You have good
Right.
players, you play tournaments, or maybe you take a cut of the sponsorship they get, you broker deals with them.
Right.
Like
Now-
so many things that could happen.
One of my biggest concerns with the whole esport thing is the longevity of one specific video game, because it's very different from like a game like soccer, right? Like soccer, it's been played for like hundreds of years, right? And still, for the most part, the same game. You may have like some rule changes, etc., right? But video games is very different because like every 5 to 7 years, like it's like NBA 2K 22, 23, like there's always a newer version, right?
So who do you invest in to take advantage of like the sum total of this?
Okay, so what I have, and that's not a plug because I'm not getting paid for this. So So I usually look at ETFs that cover video games, general, right? So that's what I'm looking at. Like one of the ones that I've invested in is called ESPO. They have all the company. They have Tencent, they have Nintendo, they have EA, they have Activision Blizzards. So
What is it again, Rams? What was it?
ESPO, ESPO.
ESPO.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pull that.
$48.
Yes.
ESPO. Yeah, we have this bot on our Discord that pulls up TradingView channels, man. Like, yo, you just type in the symbol.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
We do everything through here, man. Yo, just go.
There you go.
Yeah, we have a bot programmed into our
Ghost
server.
Squawk's where it's at, man.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
there you go.
bro, you just type a code and it pulls the TradingView chart into Discord.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So this is the chart, right?
Yeah, exactly. And you see like how it's been moving. I think when I first got in, like it was something in the 30s. So now, like since the pandemic has been going up, it basically hasn't. It receded a little bit. If you like maybe stretch it out and look at the March.
God damn! What a fucking chart, Jesus.
Right. So that's one of the ones that I've been like looking at for the last year. Just because I just want to be in the industry, right? So in there you have
goddamn.
Right.
So in there, what you have, video game publishers.
This
you have
is a
material.
tiny market cap.
Exactly. So it's growing, right? So you want to have those growing things, and it's not something like. Go ahead.
This is an
Look
ETF.
how it ripped. Look how it ripped,
Oh,
bro.
okay. Wow.
It's an
that's
ETF.
crazy.
It's an
From
ETF.
February.
Let me see here. Let
know?
me get a more
It ripped so much.
ESPO.
Putting in my orders on E-Trade now.
Like I said,
ESPO.
disclaimer:
it's gonna-
I am none.
It looks like it's going to come down a little bit.
Yeah,
Well,
it's due for a correction, but
everything's
hey,
due for a pullback in the markets eventually, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
But
but there's like a healthy retracement versus a bear market.
This
right? And I
this
think that
this to me
this
looks
is due for a healthy retracement.
This to me just looks like a classic company that is like completely hedged from the current economic environment. It's like everything it does benefits from the coronavirus, right?
Because
people
everything
stay
is
inside.
online.
People you heard the Nintendo Switch was absolutely sold out. It was actually going for more than retail price during the coronavirus.
It was going for 500, 600. It retails for $299.
Yeah.
That's
So
crazy.
yeah, I mean like a lot of like these video games. I mean like especially when you have like a lot of like younger generation and even older generation. I mean like even people in my age group are still heavily into video games. So I absolutely agree with you about the space really growing and expanding. 5 years, 10 years down the road. But it's like the question of like it's such a new thing. That how do you create value from this? How do you develop business models around this? How do you capitalize off of this trend?
And I think, and that's a good question. I don't think there's a specific answer yet. But
Order placed. Thanks, Rams.
Thanks. I am not a financial advisor. Full disclaimer. But no.
Neither are we, but that doesn't stop us.
Hey.
I don't know about you, but we have a disclaimer on our show at the bottom right hand corner, right? So that's just to protect.
We're all good.
Yeah, that's just to protect us from the legalities of that dumbass. It's like they said buy this, so I bought it.
Guys, listen, all of this is just our opinion, right? And it's for educational purposes. Seriously, we are talking about the pros and cons. We're talking about the entire things that you need to be worried about when you invest, right? And we're talking about opportunities that we see fit, but that may not be right for everybody. You know what I mean? So I can tell you what I'm doing, but that's just me as a dude voicing his opinion.
And you know what? You smart guys. I should have known you had that figured out, so it's all good.
Hey, Rams, you should check out FMCI.
Oh man!
That's something we've been blowing up on Discord for months.
Hold on, because I saw that, and I was like, I started searching. Was it like a company that did a reverse takeover? I'm trying to understand what's going on with FMC.
It's a special purpose acquisition company, and they just announced the company that they're combining with. It's similar to what VTIQ did with Nikola in KLA.
Okay, yeah, and it became tattooed chef,
yeah.
Tattooed chef,
yeah.
Their EBITDA is actually better than what Beyond is, and Beyond's trading at a $10 million market cap. $10 billion, sorry.
I'm looking at it
It
right now. That's
Make
funny.
the pitch, Chase. I have shares in this.
Yeah, it should at least hit 20, $25 easy. I think.
This is the pump and dump part of the show.
Exactly. That's where it should just like pop out like the
Disclaimer: Chase is trying to exit at $15. He needs people to push the price up.
I used to do that. We used to front run. We used to front run penny stocks and throw about 500 grand in a sub penny stock at trip one and run it up to 0015, 002, like run 1,500% in a day. It was crazy.
No, now you have Reddit.
I got in at 11.50, so I don't care. Like let it run to $25. I'll take profits and put that down on a house.
I just need a hand job. That's all.
All right, that's a good point.
Handy narrator.
Oh man! All right, so let's get back to the topic of esports, man. So you know what I noticed was very interesting now is that I'm starting to see like evolutions of like like traditional sporting stadiums being transformed.
That's a great subject.
Being transformed into a place where thousands of like gaming audience come to watch these like franchise players just compete against each other. Like, yo, how fucking crazy is that, man? Like, they're getting more audience than the NFL, the NHL, the NBA.
And it's crazy. And now I think one of the things that's gonna happen, and even we can even actually tie that to traditional sports, because even on our podcast we made an episode on esports, right? And that was before the pandemic. That was like in January, I think. And one of the things that really now I think it's super interesting is that now that you have traditional sports that cannot have any audience, right? They're gonna have to move to a medium that's closer to what esports is today. You know what I mean? What's gonna happen to the NBA? There's gonna be no attendance, right? So how are they gonna move? Are they gonna go on Twitch? Like, how is that live events gonna happen? Because like
I actually think it's through sports betting. Because the sports betting, electronic sports betting industry is crazy.
Sports
here.
betting has always been there, right? I mean, like,
it's a way to game, but it's a way to gamify the existing model.
Exactly. In the States, I think it was legalized federally everywhere, like only last year, I think.
So is esports betting legal?
It's not.
I actually can't comment on the States. I can only comment on what's going on here because that's where I was getting into with it.
Is esports betting legal, Rams?
I'm becoming less of an American.
Well, I mean, like, I mean, like, if you've seen the evolution of markets, right? I mean, like, right now you can create betting strategies around politics, right? Like, for example, who's gonna win? You go to predicted.com.
Yeah.
And and there's guys who are creating like betting models around who's gonna be the next president, right?
Yeah.
So, is there do you know of anything similar like that, but tailored for the esports market?
Honestly, I wouldn't know, but what I would say is if there was something like that, and if it was mainstream, it will probably be out of this world. Because if you think about it, esports audience is young male, and what does young male likes to do? Fucking shit. Sports and shit that boost up the testosterone.
Cheers to that, guys.
Well, my man, fucking get your haul ass on a business plan and fucking get cracking.
Clue us in, man. Clue us in.
Hey,
Chin, the first to invest.
Chin, the global esports betting market is going to be worth $30 billion in 2020.
God damn.
That's fucking insane.
So there's definitely people gambling on that shit.
I'll tell you something crazy, man. Back in 2008, when I was at Seneca College, right, I really wanted to get into the gaming space because I was studying entrepreneurship there, right? And
because you're Asian, duh.
Well, I really wanted to get into the gaming space from an entrepreneur perspective, right? And I really wanted to get into live streaming gaming. And at the time, there was a service called OnStar. Oh no, I think it's OnStar or OnGame. But it was essentially, but it was meant to be like a YouTube or Netflix style of service for gaming. Now the only issue with that was that the idea was way ahead of its time because the infrastructure and the technology was not there to allow you to download like a fucking 50 gigabyte video game and stream it real time,
stuff like that.
Right? Yeah, so it was like way ahead of its time. But like with the advance of like technology, like 5G and shit like that, like you can definitely stream like a fucking high quality video game in like 4K, 8K in real time, right? And have like a model of like what like Google Stadia,
Exactly.
like what Google
Exactly.
Stadia is doing, right? I mean, like back then it wasn't viable because the like we were still on like 2G, 3G back then. But even now, it's still not quite viable. But it will be like the future. I mean, like I really feel like you like what's
100%.
what's your take on console?
But have you seen the movie Gamer?
No, I
Gamer?
haven't seen
No.
that.
Oh,
No,
no.
with Russell Crowe.
No, I haven't seen that.
I think I've seen the trailer, but not the movie.
Like so I had
Still
I had
watch
this Rams, I had this discussion with some of my friends, right? And
Yeah.
you know, like I have friends that are like diehard PS5 friends or PlayStation, and then I have people who are like diehard Xbox. And I'm here on the side saying like, yo, you're both fucking stupid. Everything is just gonna go to a streaming model where people are just gonna be agnostic
Well, look at the movie
to
industry.
consoles.
Look at the
Because
movie
everything-
industry.
everything
Like,
is
what
just
makes
gonna be-
you think video games is not going to go the same way?
Right.
but,
So
yeah.
so what's your take on that? I mean, like, do you feel like you have to buy a fucking PlayStation 5 and a new Xbox just to play the exclusive games, or do you think
No.
everything's gonna converge to a fucking streaming model like Netflix,
Yeah.
where it's just
It,
gonna
it,
be?
it will converge once 5G becomes ubiquitous and everywhere. Like that's the thing.
So, man, like, so when you're talking about like the next 5 to 10 years and where things will go, man, like I completely agree with you, man.
Exactly.
I really feel like in 5, 10 years from now, I mean, like 5Gs is just gonna be like, you know, a normal way of life, right? But it's gonna
Exactly.
make services like this available for the new generation. We're like, what the fuck you need to buy a PlayStation 5 for?
Yeah,
Or-
because
or
even now
Xbox?
you have Stadia that launched last
Yeah.
year. It's been really spotty. It's not that good right now, and people have said it's not that good, right? But the fact that they launched it is they're building on top of that.
Right.
And that's the thing.
Yeah.
Look at the biggest hardcore, you know, published like gamings right now in consoles. You have the PS5 and the Xbox Series X that's gonna come out in the holidays this year. So you have, for example, PlayStation that's going more in the traditional way of like, we're gonna have a new console, you know, the way it's been done forever. You know, you buy your console, you play your games,
Yeah.
right? You have Xbox on the other end that's kind of like a little bit more looking towards the future. And to be honest, I think that's a lot has to do with, you know, the CEO Satya Nadella that's really
Yeah.
like forward thinking.
Yeah,
Because
he-
they tried to do it once, right?
It's the best CEO they ever had.
It's one of the great, you know, to be honest, he will go down in history as one of the biggest turnaround that
This
he's
guy's
done.
brilliant.
Yo,
you
yo,
guys
that
should really
guy
look
that
at,
guy
like, his
completely turned
commentary.
around Microsoft. He
Exactly.
he completely turned it around.
And he
Yeah,
did it
from
again.
Ballmer, who was voted the worst CEO of all time.
Ballmer that
I'm
said
serious.
that the iPhone was shit. He literally said it like, "You, what the hell is that? Like, I need a keyboard, right?" So the thing about you know, the Xbox Series X is that it's not the way that they're shaping it. They're shaping it kind of like a PC, which is like if you buy it, you might not need to buy another console for the next 20 years. You're going to be able to upgrade it, right? Like a
Right.
PC. And that's really where it's going. Because at the end of the day, once streaming really starts becoming the shit, like what would you need a console for?
Yeah, that's. I completely agree with you there, man. Like I really feel like, you know, like there's no need to be like a fucking diehard, you know, PlayStation loyalist or an Xbox loyalist, right? I mean, like at the end of the day, you're fucking playing a game, right? And that game should be fucking playable on any medium, whether it be on PC.
So what companies are doing that streaming gaming? I want to place
Google.
my orders for Monday.
So there's
Google.
Google, there's Microsoft, there's Nvidia that was doing something. I'm not sure if they're still onto it. These are the big threes. But one thing as well is that once you have streaming services on gaming, that's done. And the hardest thing about it is that the hardest thing about doing streaming on gaming is the whole, you know, coordination of movement, right? If I have my controller and I do a left turn, and this turns left at the moment, right? Because
Right,
if
yeah,
I
yeah,
shoot someone and there's a lag, that's
Yeah.
where it's not competitive enough, right?
Right.
But once you have that, what happens is
Yeah.
that
That's why they all play on landlines in competitions.
exactly
Yeah,
because
yeah, absolutely, yeah. Like when you're playing like esports, they're done on a landline.
but
Just
once
to-
you have that,
Yeah.
what happens? You have more people that can play competitive games. So what happens when
Everybody.
you have that? Exactly.
Well,
you have-
internationally too, because
boom.
not
You have
all
a
of us have the luxury of lands, right?
Yeah.
In
Yeah,
fact,
nice
in
little
third world
boom.
countries, you know, they're trying to proselytize the internet and connectivity to places like Africa, for example.
100%. So what happens? The fucking market gets bigger, your investment gets even more value. So I'm 100% in esports.
Oh no, man! I completely agree.
I'm
with
with
you,
you
man.
on that.
I really,
That's a
yeah,
good one,
I
Rams.
really
Thank
feel
you.
like esports is the future, man. I mean, like traditional sports and the way the
100%.
way traditional sports has been treated, man, it's really dying off. And the new wave of digital gaming for the new generation, like that's really gonna like take over. I mean, it already has. I mean, it's done so very stealthily because
Yeah.
like if you look at like traditional media, right? Like they're all you're still getting like sports highlights, right?
Yeah.
But you're not getting esports highlights,
No.
right?
Yet.
Not
Yeah.
yet, not yet. That's the
Yet,
key. That's
yeah.
the key, right? But again,
Well-
I mean, like when we see trends and we see where things are going, it's definitely going towards
But
this
is
model.
ESPN going to leave market share untouched? I don't think so.
I don't know, but they actually show a few. They show a few esports tournaments on the like they have ESPN 4, 5, 6.
Yeah.
They show like esports like tournaments on them.
Yeah, yeah.
But when you think about it, there's one maybe last thing I want to touch on that is that like imagine we've seen the NHL suspending their season. We've seen the NBA suspending the season. We've seen the MLS delaying their season. We've seen the MLB delaying their season. Imagine if you have an esports tournament in March and there's a coronavirus fucking outbreak. What happens?
Nothing. It's
Nothing.
still
Do
going.
remotely.
Exactly. Nothing.
Nothing.
They're like, all right, let's just go home and play. What's the problem?
It's
so
even,
instead of
more
being-
convenient. It ties back to the work from home.
Exactly. Instead of being aggregated in like a stadium where they're all playing together,
That's
they
bulletproof investment.
Yeah,
Exactly. So to me, it's like,
that's crazy,
Yeah.
man. That's fucking awesome, man. Fuck yeah, we can talk about this for fucking hours, man.
yeah, for real.
Yeah. Well, I
Awesome,
guess-
man. Well, as you know, we respect our guest time. We're coming up on 2 hours here, so we really appreciate your time, Rams. It was really good to get reacquainted again.
Cheers,
we gotta
brother.
meet up in person.
Always appreciate having you on, man. And fucking
Yeah.
we got to get together when they open up the borders or not the
Monday
borders,
we'll hit it up.
the restaurants.
Yeah, that Monday.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
So we'll
I'm down. Hit me up, yo.
we'll get the gang together. We'll hit up the old watering hole. Get ourselves some new sponsors.
And
Yes,
congrats again, guys. You've been doing great. So I'm really proud of you guys, and you got good stuff. And
Appreciate it, man. We've been
Thank you
working
very
really
much,
hard.
man. Thank you very much, man. And man, you should jump on our Discord, man.
I'm about to do that right now. By the way,
You should snoop around and see what we've been up to, man.
all right, sounds good, man. Let me get on your shenanigans. I never said that word, but whatever, man. Oh, good.
Let's go.
Our tomfoolery.
All right, man. Well, so we'll leave it at that, Rams. Yo, thank you very much for joining us.
All right, man. All right, take care, guys.
Appreciate it, Rams.
Have a great
All right.
one, day.
Have a good one.
Take care, guys.